right. Welcome, everyone, to the Village Plan Commission for May 18th, 2017. We'll begin our meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. If the secretary will please call the roll.
Moylan.
Here.
Stanton.
Here.
Croner.
Here.
Shaw.
Here.
Janowski. Bartko.
Here.
Capel.
Here.
Katusha.
Here. We have a quorum. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the May 4th, 2017 regular meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Chairman, I'd like to bring up one thing.
All right.
For the record, I just want to have added in there, but we talked about security cameras for inside and outside McDonald's, just to make sure that that's added in there.
Yes, I did research that, and the recording secretary said they did state in the meeting that they had security cameras. And did you get an opportunity to check with them?
Yep.
And they do have them. But we can add that into the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You have that, Barbara. We can add that with an amendment to the minutes, discussion of the security cameras. Okay. Do we, and is that all right with the movement?
Acceptable, sure.
Acceptable to you, and it's been seconded?
Yes.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda is, actually, this is up for a recommendation to the village board, so I don't know if it's appropriately called workshop or not, but it does state in the agenda, this is an item to consider recommending to the village board the First Baptist Church plat of consolidation, which is located at 7020 179th Street. They have apparently two plats of property which they want to encompass into a single parcel of just over 1.5 acres. And is there discussion from staff on this?
Yes, thank you. This property is up for consideration of the village board for annexation. An annexation agreement has already been drafted. As part of that review, the property is divided into two parcels, but we have a minimum requirement of 2 acres for any religious institution. So in the annexation agreement, it recognizes the nonconformance of that, and therefore it becomes a legal nonconforming. But to do that, we need to combine these two lots. So it's a simple plat of consolidation. We're looking for a vote this evening, and then that'll be recommended to the village board.
All right.
Can I ask why we require 2 acres for a religious institution?
I wasn't here when we created that, but I imagine there's some issue of the attendance, rhythm of the attendance, because obviously Sundays are pretty full. I imagine to be able to accommodate the kind of parking that churches usually have. That would be my best guess.
And are there any plans for the church to expand or?
No, but this is kind of that's a good question that you asked that. Absent doing this and annexing it this way, they could come in and look for development on their additional parcel there on the side. They have no intention of doing that, and they had no objection to consolidating the lots.
Thank you.
Okay. Mark, you had a question?
Yes. Any plans for sidewalks along 179th
When the
Street?
179th is improved, the annexation agreement does provide for that. And so when this property redevelops or expands or gets a different use in its existing structure, they would have to participate in the development of the 179th. That would include sidewalks.
So since we're just simply doing a
Just doing a plat of consolidation.
plat of consolidation, that wouldn't
No.
motivate.
But it's already considered in the annexation agreement. It's already covered.
Okay.
Okay, let the record reflect that Commissioner Janowski has joined us, and also looking very dapper today, Tony. I think
Thank you.
we all have to start working, stop working so late, but, you know, we're, just so you haven't missed much, we're on the first item for approval of the village board for consolidation of the plat of the First Baptist Church. Bring you up to speed.
He may have to stand for the pledge, though.
We can have you stand later. We'll rub that in. Are there any other questions on this item on behalf of any of the commissioners? All right, this item is up for recommendation to the village board that they approve the plat of consolidation upon annexation. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the village board grant approval for a plat of consolidation to the applicant, First Baptist Church, to combine PIN number 28-31-300-013-0000 and PIN number 28-31-300-014-0000 into a single parcel encompassing approximately 66,573 square feet, approximately 1.53 plus acres, located at 7025 179th Street.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Moylan. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. If the secretary will call the roll, please.
Moylan,
Yes.
Stanton,
Yes.
Croner,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Janowski,
Yes.
Berthold,
Yes.
Capel,
Yes.
Matusha.
Yes. Motion carries. All right, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is a workshop on the parallel Verizon cell tower at 6775 Prosperity Drive. This is for a site plan approval and a special use permit and a variation for maximum height, which I think is, what, this is a about 14-foot extension with the antennas they're adding on to the 100-foot standard?
Yes.
Okay. We're all ears for staff's presentation on this one.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As the chairman said, we do have a proposal for a new cell tower. This is primarily going to service the amphitheater area. The carrier originally here will be Verizon, and additionally the village of Tinley Park will add some antennas on the top of the structure for our own village needs. There is an additional spot for another co-location on the antenna as well for the future. Here is an elevation of the proposed cell tower, and I'll have a better colored version of this in a few slides here. Here's the site, and let me show them really quickly. You might be familiar with the site. To the west, there's Oakwood Avenue. To the north, there's Prosperity Drive. The property just north of this is the Tinley Park Corporate Center. It's the about 1 million square foot industrial building with M-Block in it currently. And further north of that is Interstate 80. And then just south of here is the north access road for the amphitheater. And the amphitheater is roughly over in this direction. There's also a retention pond over to the east. And there's Wood Avenue further to the west. This is the surrounding zoning of the area. This particular parcel is zoned ORI, which stands for Office and Restricted Industrial. It's currently owned and operated by Community Services Foundation, which is a nonprofit, and they do sort of a mixture of industrial education type practices there. You can read more about them on their website. We do have some B zoning to the west here, with B5 where the CarMax is located, B3 a little bit south of here where the flea market is located, and the amphitheater is ORI as well. And again, that's M-Block, Tinley Park Corporate Center building is M-Block. There is one little sliver here of R1, which eventually will be part of this M1. I do want to note that the nearest residential structure is over 2,000 feet away from this. It's actually connected by duty. So the cell tower really isn't negatively impacting any residential. It's not going to be an eyesore, and it's definitely not within any fire. All right, here is an image of the site plan over on the aerial image. And a little bit better rendering that I did of this just to show you. This is where the driveway will connect. for the access vehicles or the service workers to get to the site. There will be a fence around the site here. There will be some ground equipment, and then this is a rough estimate of what the pole may look like size-wise in relation. The antennas are not going to be colored. This is just for me pointing out who's going to be where on the pole. The green is the proposed Verizon. This is about 70 feet up on the pole. Then the orange is all village antennas, so we have a couple different ones. We have one in the middle here as well as two on the top. And the yellow would be whatever other carrier would want to be co-locating on the tower in the future. And the overall height of the actual monopole, which is the gray here, is 95 feet. And then there's always a lightning rod on the top of these poles. This particular one stands at 5 feet tall, so it brings it up to an even 100. And the village antennas are, the top of them are at 114 feet. Our village code specifies that the maximum height allowed is 100 feet. Sorry, I'll wait for everyone to take their seats. So there will be a variance necessary for the village's antennas. So the petitioner is requesting that variance in order to accommodate our needs on the pole. The actual Verizon or other carriers' needs fall below that, so we just want to make note that the need for the variance is because of the village's needs. And again, it'll just be 114 feet tall at the top. Speaking of some open items for this site plan here, we do want to talk about the fence a little bit. Staff believes that 6 feet privacy fence would be great. However, we have the option of considering possibly going up to 8 feet tall. That would cover the majority of what you would see potentially for this ground equipment. I believe some of those are maybe 10 feet tall maximum, if I remember correctly. And so an 8-foot privacy fence would give us just a little bit more coverage potentially than a 6-foot tall fence. And again, they are proposing a vinyl privacy fence. So we don't have to go back and forth with the wood vinyl like we have on some other projects recently, so that's great. I also want to note out there that there's a lot of landscaping, just naturalized landscaping out there, so you really can't see the site very well from the north access road. A lot of that's going to be covered pretty well and screened pretty well by the existing landscaping, and they're really not touching any of that off the site here. And so also here is another image showing exactly what those heights will be. As we said, the green is Verizon, the yellow is the future co-location, and the orange is village. And our last open item we wanted to discuss with the Planning Commission was landscaping. I pulled an image from the originally approved landscape plan from when the building was built back in the early 2000s, just to show you what was proposed. Our main concern is just this north area here along Crossberry. You can see there was some different planting groupings around here. Today, the aerial, this was taken away last spring. We have kind of lost some of those plantings. So we'd really like the petitioner to work with the property owner and get those plantings back. There's, like I said, there's really not a lot of opportunities for actual landscaping around the cell tower site itself because it's already got so much built in. You know, this is a great area that they can utilize some landscape improvements in conjunction with the site plan approval and special use permit for the cell tower. And that's all I have for you, but I think the petitioner does have a short presentation and some handouts of that presentation if you'd like to.
I think we would like to hear some more. Is the petitioner here?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to hear some more from you. I think particularly as it applies to the height of the fencing and the landscaping improvements.
Absolutely. So I actually have a very short handout that Stephanie has. And she will be handing out shortly. She's also pulling it up. Oh, yes. Yes. So my name is Kathleen Groark, and I'm here on behalf of Parallel Infrastructure and Verizon Wireless. So I just want to go through really quickly how cell towers are selected and where we decide to go. So the first thing that happens is our radio frequency engineers look at an area and decide that we need extra coverage there. There's going to be a need in the future that and very soon we're going to have an issue here. So our radio frequency engineers found a need over here at right around 6775 Prosperity Drive. And so what I have here is our RF engineers created a propagation map. This is currently what the coverage is without this site. As you can see, the green is you have good in vehicle coverage, and blue is good in building coverage. The darker colors of those are both even better, more reliable. The lighter colors are unreliable. So you can see in this area we don't have very good coverage. And then if you go to our propagation map with this site, you can see that we are planning to get a lot more very solid coverage. And this will cover the amphitheater area as well as the shopping area over on Harlem Avenue, as well as getting a little bit more further south, starting to get into that residential neighborhood. Again, you just saw this, but this is another aerial or elevation page of what we are proposing. And then this is, again, just a quick site plan of where the site will be, all of the compound. And as you know, the wireless demand is ever growing. More and more people use their cell phones as their main form of communication. And more people are using it for vital E911 communications. More than half of people make calls to their emergency services from their cell phones, and over 50% of senior Americans have cell phones, and they cite safety concerns for those reasons. Thank you. And in regards to the fence, we have no problem going to an 8-foot fence. We are more than happy to comply with that request. And I have been working with our property owner to try and see what sort of landscaping we can do to bring something back into the front.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think, excuse me, just for security purposes, I don't know how, scalable a 6-foot is, even if it's a privacy fence, but it's certainly more scalable than or assaultable than a 6-foot. So let's go for the 8, in my opinion, if we can. I'd like to see that happen. Happy to see we don't have to fight about the finish on the fencing. And I think Stephanie's shown us a pretty good need for some improvements there on the north side, so if the property owner doesn't have objections, I think, again, that's another thing we'd like to close out as an open item. Are there questions on behalf of any of the commissioners, other points? Ken?
Quick question. I didn't see it in the staff report. There's like a little triangle sliver on that side of the road between the property and the pond.
Okay.
That's a separate parcel, right? It looks like it's
Correct.
like a little jut out of the ORI. Is that a different owner? And is that piece of property buildable?
You mean this piece here, or this little?
No, I'm to the right of it, to the east of it. The little gray ORI chunk. It's like a little truck.
Oh, no, he's talking about, go straight, yeah, right there.
Right there.
And it's,
I believe that's owned by the same person that owns the amphitheater property, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
there's some awkward platting out there, but that's the Indian boundary line, and so that sort of historically is sort of made for some strange boundaries.
Okay. But it looks to be a large enough piece of property that it is buildable, right? Or is that part of a
I think it's also got a
drainage
lot of
system?
wetlands on it as well.
That's what my point is that you had mentioned in the staff report about the screening, in that there's plantings there, but potentially if that were redeveloped, it's not their property, so it goes up in the.
It doesn't even have access to Prosperity. I don't believe.
Yeah, there's not access to a public road there either, so.
It's really going to have to develop as part of the amphitheater property.
But you said they owned it anyway.
Right.
All right. Well, to that end, I would echo the chairman's comments about the 8-foot.
Is the property owner here, by any chance?
No, they're not.
What goes on in the building? Nora?
Community Services Foundation is a not-for-profit. They help people who have special needs, give them some skills. I know they do some light construction work, such as putting heads on brooms and so on and so forth.
Do you know if they've notified the parents or the guardians, if the individuals need guardians, that they notified them that this was going up at all, or are you aware of that at all, or no?
I do know that they brought this before their board. And
I'm sorry?
They have brought this proposal before their board, and it has been approved by their board.
And I know we had discussed the improvements in the amphitheater area recently as well. I know there was discussion about the fact when we have 5 billion millennials all trying to use their phone at the concerts at once, that it sucks everybody's signal away. So I suppose this will also give at least people on Verizon some better coverage in that area, right?
Yeah, yes, it will. And in addition, like we said, we have a space for an additional carrier. So if AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile want to come on there, that will alleviate any of those carriers' customers as well.
Okay, and then it would eliminate the need for a second tower just because you have a second provider. Okay.
Stephanie, is a taller tower for the village, is that for police and fire?
I believe so. We've been working with Public Works to make sure that all of our needs and the different antennas and the specifications were sent to the petitioner. They've incorporated those into the plans, which is what you saw. So it's been great to have them working with us, and we'll be having a lot better village communication because of us as well.
Chairman?
Tony, you have a question?
Got a question for the village. That area that Commissioner Shaw was talking about, that triangle area, Stephanie, you had said that that was landscaping out there. That appears to be a marsh or wetlands. So I know it's not on the map, and I don't know who has jurisdiction because these maps are supposed to be updated every 3 years. There's a buffer, being the fence and stuff, has to follow the 50-foot, according to the, it all depends on if it's deferred to the county for the Department of Natural Resources. So has anybody been out from the village to identify that? Because it appears there's landing turtles out there, and so the question is, I think some of this has to be considered before we actually decide if we're compliant with where the buffer is going.
Okay. I'm not aware of whether that's been investigated from the village. If it has to do with the wetlands and any federal agencies enforcing those provisions, I would think they would be doing those inspections and looking at whether or not they're meeting those standards. I know as a part of this project, I believe they had to send certain environmental studies and notifications to the FCC, correct?
Correct. Actually, we have done a wetland delineation on this site, so we are aware exactly where the wetlands are, and we are reaching out to the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District as well as the Army Corps of Engineers regarding this location.
Okay, so then we'll have that paperwork then.
I'm sorry, I was making sure everybody's nice and cool this evening. What was the question? You're worried about the wetland inventory?
Well, you got wetlands, it appears to where Commissioner Shaw had identified that triangle there. So if there's wetlands there, we have to follow the EPA Clean Air Act as far as where we can put buffers.
Absolutely. We have to file NPDES reports weekly with any work on there. Silt fences have to be erected. They're doing everything on site. They're not on that triangular
But
piece.
there's nothing in the proposal though that identifies it.
Well, that's engineering. That's all goes through engineering. It's not the purview of this group.
I mean, basically, this boils down to a height requirement variation, and
What
and
this-
that's really been at the request of the village. I think we're the reason they're actually exceeding the 100 feet, if I understand. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
What you're looking at is the height variation in the site plan.
And the special use permit.
And, I'm sorry, yes, special use.
Okay, any other commissioners have questions on this?
If nobody else, I got one more. You know, looking at, I went out and visited the site, had gone by where there were the other cell towers, we had the work that was approved. It appears we didn't get the fences up that that were originally approved from the Plan Commission. So as far as enforcement with this coming through the Planning Commission, if we can have a line item or an extension on an motion that, you know, before these towers go online, that all the projected work is completed. I have pictures at 2 sites that the fences never got put up, and that was, you know, we're going on a year now. So for whatever reason, if they got signed off for,
Talking about for mobility?
Which sites?
Which project you talking
well,
about?
we got the 2 of them. One was at the World, the other one was by the Public Works.
Public Works is not, they have not received their final, they're not complete yet. And I don't know if I don't know
I
where mobility
haven't
is.
done final inspections for either site, so that's something I look at when I go out to do the final inspection, make sure they comply with the Plan Commission's approved plans. If they're not compliant, they don't receive final approval. So they
You might just have gotten out there too soon, Tony.
Well, just went out, well, the whole thing is all the equipment's up, and, you know, so, you know, you're looking at all this fencing over at the Worlds, and, you know, now it's that season, and the reasoning was for the fencing for it was the public safety. And there's fencing up here, and I could pass these pictures around to the commissioners, you know, that you're looking at something that somebody can just kind of pull apart.
Sure.
So,
I'd be happy to go out there.
if you can at least address it to the building department commissioner who's in charge of it, and thank you.
All right, this is just a workshop. There's no vote on this today, so this will come up at, I guess, at our next meeting is scheduled for when, Paula?
June 1st.
Okay. This will
This will go
be
to a public hearing on June 1st.
a public hearing on June 1st, Kathleen, to mark your calendar.
All right, thank you all.
Appreciate your presentation. Okay, the next item on our agenda, item number 3, is another workshop, and apparently there must be something going around on, what do you call it, social media or something. I see all these people I never see around here. Happy to see you all. Apparently got the mayor all excited. He asked me to, he sent me a little love note. He asked me to read before we start on this as well. Let's see what he has to say. You ready, Barb?
The first thing.
To Mr. Ed Matuszek, Plan Commission Chair, to the Plan Commission of the Village of Tinley Park. It has come to my attention that certain social media sites have alleged that I have some sort of interest in the residences at Brookside Glen, which is before you tonight. I want to be clear that this information is patently false. First, I have no interest in this property or project whatsoever. That includes financial or otherwise as defined by the Tinley Park Village Code or any other ethics statute I'm aware of. My uncle, my father's brother, and I think that's you, Scott. Nice to see you. Is the owner of the property in question. I want to reiterate that I personally am not involved, nor do I have any interest in this endeavor or any other company or endeavors that my uncle, Scott Vandenberg, is involved in. Moreover, I have never and will never use my position either as trustee or mayor to advocate for or against this project or any other project that a family member may be involved in. I hope this information helps you in analyzing this project, like all others before you, in accordance with the zoning code of Tinley Park and all other state and federal laws. Respectfully, Jacob C. Vandenberg, Mayor. And I'll leave that with you as well, Barb. And I think we had a commissioner who also wanted to indicate and avoid any conflicts or possibly recuse himself, so I'll let you
Yes,
have a
thank you.
turn before we start discussing.
Thank you. Pursuant to the Village of Tinley Park's Code of Ethics, I hereby disclose that I have an indirect family relationship with the owner of the subject property. I have spoken with the village attorney, and he's advised me that out of abundance of caution and to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, that I should refrain from participating in any conversation or deliberation regarding this petition and abstain from any vote taken.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any potential conflict or interest before we start talking about things? All right. And just for the sake of the public, this is not a public hearing. I'm always happy to hear what people have to say. If you look at the agenda, we have time for public comment at the end, but basically this is due to the Open Meetings Act, which didn't have quite all these restrictions when I was a trustee a quarter of a century ago. We have to do everything that we, even look at each other in the open now. So basically, normally this would just be us sitting around a table talking about it, investigating and getting questions, much like you probably have questions before we can even decide what recommendations we want to make. So it's kind of a workshop for us to ask questions, understand what's going on, just so you all understand what's going on. But if anyone does have a comment, if you look at the agenda, that's we do have a place for that at the end, and I'll be happy to take public comments as well. But for now, you'll have to be bored with us while we kind of discuss things. So at this point, I guess we'll start by hearing from staff to fill us in what this is about. I know there was a planned unit development talked about many years ago on this, and seems as though things have changed a little bit, and now we've got some requests for a substantial deviation. So love to hear what it's all about, Paula.
Just start out with an executive summary, and I did get a chance to speak to someone. We always actually are real happy when our audience is full, because this helps make the public, or the process, the development review process, go even better, because we're here to serve you, and as the chairman said, when the public hearing comes around, we certainly welcome your comments this evening as well. But what the commission is going to be discussing this evening is an area out in Brookside Glen. This is one of the last residential areas, or multi-family residential areas. And the approved plan for this area provides for 9 structures, 16 units each, for a total number of dwelling units, 144 dwelling units. So that was approved back in 2000. So the developer has the right to develop according to that plan. As a consequence of their market study, understanding where the trends are right now, understanding that the market is different and than it was when this was done in 2000, and understanding that the village is really trying to attract a young professional to the community. We're going through our branding exercise at the moment. So they have proposed a plan that takes that same unit count, that same density, and instead of 9 structures, put it into 2 structures. So the 2 structures are 72 units each. What this allows for, as you can imagine, you have the same amount of space, is provide for more green space. But more importantly than that, the applicant has elected to provide luxury amenities associated with those 2 dwellings. And we'll talk more in depth about that as we go through the process. So the zoning on this property, is shooting on there. Is that someone else? Okay. Background was next. All right, background. Let me talk about background first. So as I mentioned, when this was approved in 2000, it was approved in this format. And it might be hard for you to see. The red circle is the subject property, and it isn't even defined as it is now because the roads weren't laid out. But adjacent to 191st was going to be community shopping. Below that, or south of that, would be office and restricted industrial. And south of that, condo and apartments. And that was the very original plan that was adopted as Brookside Glen. Subsequent to that, this didn't have my stuff on it either. Okay. In 2007, the structure up there on the right-hand side in the brown, that was approved in 2007. It actually didn't make it all the way to the village board. It did go through Plan Commission and get approval. It was proposing 9 buildings of 8 units and 1 building of 16 units. But as I said, that didn't receive approval, actually didn't even receive approval by the Plan Commission because of the orientation. You can see the back of the buildings were oriented to the street, and so it didn't even make it to Village Board for approval. Then in 2014, the plan that you see in blue, that had 123 townhomes in 17 different buildings. That again didn't get a lot of traction, mainly because the applicant didn't consider the pipeline that runs and traverses the property in an east-west direction. So over time, I mean, from 2000 is still the plan that stands in place because that is what was approved for 9 structures, 16 units in total 144 units. We've had a couple people come before us and look for approval, but they have not succeeded in getting that from the village. Let's go back to zoning. The property, you can see the subject property there in white. It's just immediately adjacent to the ComEd lines on the right, or to the west. It's surrounded by R5 zoning district, multifamily district. Across Magnuson is the commercial, what you see in pink, that's commercially zoned, vacant right now. And then further to the south of the orange area, which is the R5, is R2 single family. In terms of uses, the red dotted line, that's the issue that was really very important for that one project, and for some reason they haven't contemplated it. But that sort of traverses the property at the southern end. There is a pump station on the south end. There's detention on the north. And as I mentioned, planned commercial flanking both sides of 80th Avenue. There are condos over to the east of 80th Avenue. And they're similar in terms of height and, I guess, architectural design, not style, in that they are 4-story condominiums over ground floor, half subterranean garages. And I don't have a pointer, but show those of you that live in the area, that is these units over here. And there's some more units over here that are similar. I think what's important to understand, I think the Plan Commission has seen enough of these substantial deviations to understand, when we have a planned unit development, the whole concept between a planned unit development is you take a piece of property, and it was quite a large one, I think it was 800 and some acres originally. Brookside Glen, 828 acres in 1990. So when I believe it was Maloney came in, when they looked at that large area, they master planned the whole area. And that was where that plan was that I showed you a minute ago. And they do their best to see how the area would develop. However, markets change, economics change. We all know what happened back in 2006 and 2007, drastically changed the profile of housing. So since that time, developers have had to adapt to what the market is dictating to maintain the profits that they're all looking for. In a PUD, the whole beauty of a planned unit development is that it's somewhat flexible. Anything can be negotiated in a PUD. If it was straight zoning, they would have to abide by the zoning ordinance, all the setbacks, all the height restrictions. In a planned unit development, it's kind of a negotiation between the developer and the village to comprehensively master plan an area. So back when this was originally done, this was the best guess that anybody could do. But as I mentioned, in 2000, there was another plan, and that's the best guess that they had at that time of how the property would develop. When the Plan Commission contemplates any kind of change, normally, we've had variances come before the Plan Commission before, where a piece of property might ask for a variation on its setback. Straight zoning, that's going to be a variation. When the Plan Commission looks at a variation, they have to consider the burden of proof on the developer to prove that there's a hardship for that variation. And one thing that the Plan Commission always considers when they're granting a variation is what is the precedence that it's setting, because once you grant a variation for one piece of property, you need to consider that that might be replicated somewhere else in the village. The beauty of a PUD is that it's not looked at as a straight variation, it's looked at as an exception. It's still non-conforming to a code. If we identify, that's what the planners will do, we'll identify any non-conforming, but the burdens of proof and the findings of fact are not the same. So when the Plan Commission looks at these types of exceptions, and staff will present to you what those exceptions are, they'll look and judge and make their decisions based on the original intent of the PUD and what the intent of the PUD was at that time. I think that's an important consideration to make. One other thing I failed to mention on the zoning, let me just go back a minute. In addition to straight zoning that we all are used to, it has an overlay district. That's an urban design overlay district. And we've kind of talked about this sometimes in the legacy district and some of our other projects. The whole point of an urban overlay district is to prioritize the architecture and the streetscape and not the vehicle. So there's some specific guidelines that the urban overlay district defines, such as making sure that the property isn't fronted with parking, so that the streetscape as you drive down the street isn't just parking, parking, parking. And so in our negotiations with this developer, we said we want that building moved up to the front, and we want that parking screened. So that was a requirement. It's replicated in the existing developments out there, the condos and townhomes that are similar. And that, just understand that that was one of the requirements we had when we looked at the site plan. I'm sorry if you people are hot. Maybe it's just me, but it's warm in here. We've got the air conditioner on.
Doesn't say anything on the plate.
As good as it'll go.
Speaking of the site plan, here is an idea of what that site plan looks like overlaid on the aerial image, just to give you an idea of how it wraps around Magnuson Lane here. And keep in mind, this will also have a connection. This road will be completed as part of this project. There will be a connection up to 191st Street as well to help mitigate some of the traffic concerns toward 80th Avenue there along Greenway. So effectively, Greenway Boulevard turns into Magnuson Lane when it goes north toward 191st there. So I just want to point out, as Paula said, there are 2 residential buildings with 72 units each and a clubhouse structure in the middle that is 1 story. And as Paula mentioned as well, there are many amenities on the site, and we'll talk about this as well. All right, so just to give you some history, this is not what we're looking at today. This is where we started originally with the developer. You can see on here, and I'm going to use the mouse to help point things out. We had kind of the same look. We had 2 buildings. We had the clubhouse in the middle, but in the back, we had a whole big long row of garages. So originally when they came to us, there was no first floor subterranean level parking under the building. It was all surface parking and garages. And this presented some issues with fire code and also with aesthetics. A whole big long line of garages is not something you typically look for in these developments, and it's a very long line of garages. So we worked with the developer to make that site plan better, to try and get that parking elsewhere, and that's what you'll see in today's site plan. Also, the access points are a little bit different here. Again, this wasn't really connected here to this dog park area. The connection to the proposed dog park for this development was really just through this parking space here or around the sidewalk, and there would be a separate entrance to go to that pump station that you see back to the south of the site. Again, a lot less green space in this. If you notice all of the gray with the parking and all of the orange with the buildings, there's really not as much amenity space or green space in this proposal. So again, we worked for many iterations on exactly how we would get to a better plan. This is what was in the staff report, and we've even got one better than this in a second here. But let me go through and explain a little bit more about what they've changed. So in this one, you can see they've removed the garages, and they have 144 surface spaces in this proposal, and then each unit actually has 1 indoor space. So they've got essentially 2 parking spaces per unit. They've got 144 between the 2 buildings, 72 each inside on the first floor, and again, 144 around the building. You can also see those amenities here, and I've got a little rendering of those. They have some outdoor grilling stations with a sink. They also have some frisbee golf and quite a few other amenities.
And then she mentioned how it's on one way in.
You mean for the
Parking.
And this is the current site plan. Just since last week with our discussions, we asked for a few more improvements and we got them. And you can see now there is one way in for the garages. Before, if I go back here, the garages didn't have entrances on the other side, on both of these ends. So we asked for them to add those so that you could move more fluidly through the garages. So that's been added. They've reconfigured this access point here. So instead of having an access point right here and right here, you can see that there. This is a little unsafe here to have those so close together. So we asked that they combine them, which they did, and it actually makes for a nicer green area here as well. And they've actually land banked some of the parking spaces too. So let me get back to this really quickly. As far as parking, while we're talking about parking, one of the things we wanted to do, as Paula mentioned, is with the urban design overlay district, we wanted to make sure that the intent of that was met, meaning that the buildings came forward, the parking went back. It's for aesthetics as well as making it more pedestrian oriented and less vehicular oriented. And so you can see in their latest proposal, there's not really any parking that comes in front of the buildings in this case. And they're proposing some of these land-banked parking spaces to be the ones that would be closer. So you can see here, there's some little dotted lines in here that show where parking could go if they needed in the future, as well as along here. And this whole area here, it would fit a parking lot there, but they're going to make it green space for now until they have the need for that parking. Okay.
So how many spaces have you gone down to? You went from 144, what are you down to in this plan?
It was down to 144. It was another 72. We had around 260 spaces before outside.
Okay.
So we had 1.5 spaces outside.
Okay, currently.
This one has 144. The previous one had 1.5.
Remember, they had been equal, so they had 2 per unit.
Yep. So, sorry. So they have, I believe, the same amount of spaces. It's just some of them are land banked. I think you land banked 72.
We land banked. We have 144 spaces presently that are not land banked.
Okay.
And we have 72 additional spaces that are land banked.
So,
And there's always 144 in underground.
That's right.
all right, so we are at least meeting the current
You're
standard for the
basically
PUD is, I believe, 2 off-street parking per unit, right? Okay, so we're not going under that.
No.
Okay.
Even with the land bank, we're not going underneath that.
Or 2.
You'll be at 2 without the land banking, you're at 2 parking spaces. With the land banking, you're 2.5.
Okay.
If
And
you
we
were to
would-
turn those into parking
That's correct.
places,
Right.
let's just say that doesn't happen, then we're at 2 per unit?
That's
Right.
right.
We requested them to do that. I mean, the intent is to meet the code, and at any time, we could require them to develop the land banked ones. But the idea is, you kind of see how the market's going to go, and there's a lot of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and being this close to Metra, the anticipation is that they aren't going to need 2.5 parking spaces per unit.
That's, while we're on this, and only because we're talking about the parking, that's one of the questions I have here. In the executive summary, on the first paragraph, it states that the applicant proposes to construct 2 multifamily structures with 72 2- and 3-bedroom rental units in each building for a total of 144. But then I'm hearing you guys say that there's going to be some
No,
one.
it's an error.
and then-
I'm glad you caught that. Good job. It's 1 and 2 bedroom. There are
So
no
how many
3
total
bedrooms.
bedrooms are there?
We're going to get into that when we get into
Well, I
the
know,
architecture.
that has to do with the parking places, though, that's why I'm asking.
Right, there are 48 2-bedrooms, and there are 24 1-bedrooms.
So there are no 3 bedrooms at all?
No, that's what I'm saying, that's an error, I'm glad you caught that.
That's correct. There's no 3 bedrooms.
1 and 2 bedrooms is all. Thanks for catching that.
So I think that covers most of the parking discussion. Let me also talk really quickly about the setbacks. So we talked a little bit about the urban design overlay district, the setbacks of the building. I wanted to point out that the urban design overlay district requires a maximum setback of 20 feet. So basically the building could only be 20 feet back from the front property line along the street. You know, in some areas, it does meet this, in other areas, it does not. We also want to be cognizant of the development patterns around the area too, and the scale of the building as well. So we did an analysis, and the setbacks range from 24 feet to 30 feet from the property line along Magnuson Lane, which generally meets most other setbacks. Generally, in other areas of town, you'll see 25 feet or 30 feet, in some other areas 40 feet, but those are large lots for single-family residential. In this case, they're meeting the intent of it by pushing it forward, and we want to make sure that the building is respectful of the scale of the street. And there's a couple pictures later on showing the existing buildings that have 16 units a little bit further down Greenway that Paula pointed out earlier, just to show you kind of what the idea of the scale is, and making sure there is still green space between the building and the property line, just so that there is a nice area for landscaping, buffering as well in front of the building, and having some foundation.
And what are the setbacks for the buildings, the condo buildings, those 4-story tall
The
buildings?
condo buildings, I believe,
Yeah, we'll get into that in architecture, a whole section on building height.
No,
Oh.
the setbacks. You're talking about setbacks right now, so
Oh, okay.
I'm asking what are the setbacks for those buildings? I want to make sure that we're in proportion.
We have that somewhere.
okay, that was the one that was
24 to 30. I was going to say that.
Yep, that one is 24 to 30, and I'm sorry, these are anywhere from
14 to
36
36,
feet
yep.
between the two buildings. So, like I said, in some cases, they're meeting that code of the maximum of 20.
Maybe everybody could try and silence their phones, please.
So again, it just depends on the different buildings. You can see building 2, which is on the left side of the screen, visibly has a little bit more green space in front of it, and that's where you see the 22 to 36 range, rather than building 1, which has a little less space, and that's 14 to 24. Yeah, and it's basically from the curvature of the street, and the petitioner's done a really good job of trying to make this building match that curvature as best as they can. Otherwise, we'd end up with some very strangely boxy-looking buildings. So, and Paula will go into a little bit more about how they really made the architecture work with this curve as well later in the report.
Sort of a planning trick, you know, when you were starting from scratch and designing streets, a lot of times you will do a street with a curvature just for that your line of sight is graduated, so that you're, for a building like this and you're trying to minimize the bulk of a building, it's great that it's on a curvature of a street like that, so you can imagine you're only seeing a portion of that building as you're driving along the street.
Paul, I got a quick question. Line of sight's important. What about as far as, was it taking consideration, you know, us being, you know, in a Region 5 with a lot of snow, where does the snow go? Was that taken in consideration of where this gets plowed? And
Yes, I think the fact
I
that
mean,
we...
has it been considered when?
Yeah,
in the
in a
master?
general sense. The land banking, that was one of the things why we wanted to go to this land banking, and so that we provided more open spaces for that, not only because it's more green space, but also for snow removal. They have, if you compare the two, do you want to compare the two again? You can kind of tell by green. Look at the difference just in the gray area between the two properties. And actually, you have an impervious count on that too.
Yeah, the green space increased between this plan and this plan, mainly because of the land banking of some of the parking, as well as some of the reconfiguration of the new drive aisle.
Can you read that amount on there, or is it too small?
I cannot read that.
Okay. I suspect the applicant can give us those percentages when we get to there, right?
Okay. Couple other things I'd like to mention. Going back to parking really quickly, there could potentially be the need for an exception for the parking setback. The Urban Design Overlay District requires 25 feet from the front property line for the parking. In this case, I think they've met
They've
that.
met it now, yeah.
Yeah, they may have met it between this plan and the previous plan.
They did.
You can see here, there was some parking really close here to the street. And then down here, there's a few more as well, so.
It's 25 right there.
All right, we've got 25, so they've met those requirements, so there will not need to be an exception for the current plan. Moving on, this is just a quick view of their landscape plan. This shows that there's a plentiful amount of plantings, both tree-wise and shrub-wise, you can see that they've got, again, a lot of green space. This has not been updated to match the current plan, so again, this will look even greener down in this area here and be reconfigured to make sure they match up the plans. I'm sure we'll have that for us for the next meeting. And you can see also, they've got kind of a little green space tucked over here. We have adopted arboretum, and that leads me to discuss some of the amenities on the site. So as Paula mentioned earlier, they have incorporated a lot of what we term luxury amenities to this site. And it makes it really nice for the people that live there. They get to share in all these different amenities. The most apparent one here, you can see it is a pool by their clubhouse.
Is that an indoor pool?
It's an exterior pool.
Exterior pool?
Inside the clubhouse, they do have a fitness center, locker rooms, a lounge, a meeting room, a computer room, and a great room with a kitchenette. They're also offering free Wi-Fi in there. The outdoor pool will also have some sort of cabana layout, and I think the applicant can discuss any specifics on those, but you can see those would be right over here. Also, this one here, there is ground level parking garages with one space per dwelling unit. So again, in this view, you can see here how those parking garages go under there. I'm sure Paula will talk about this as well, but there is some berming being done around the base of the structure to kind of mitigate some of this blank wall of that parking structure. In addition, you'll see in the renderings for architecture that the applicant has added some green wall landscaping amenities on there to, again, add some more interest to that.
Stephanie, while you're on that, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you go back to the revised proposal that you guys have?
Mm-hmm.
So the underground or subterranean parking, I apologize, there's some parking in the light yellow areas too?
Mm-hmm. That's also, it's an additional garage space because they wanted to make sure they had one per unit. So the great thing about that is that it made for a rooftop terrace area on the top of that parking garage, which is an additional amenity for the residents.
Show the picture, you had the picture of that. That was
Yeah.
at one rendering. So that's above that extension.
So there's sort of an outdoor space that they can use up there above the garage. And again, this was just added to make sure they can make the count work for one per unit.
And the idea is, can you go back to your other
Mhm.
modified version? The exit and entrance into those garage spaces are going to be in or out, correct? I mean, there's not one entrance and one exit that can go either way?
They can go either way here.
How wide is that? How wide are those spaces where the patio's going, those light colored?
They all meet the parking dimensions, the village requirements for the aisle and the parking dimensions.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick here, I just want to finish off the amenities. There will be outdoor grilling areas for each building that includes a grill station, fire pits, outdoor seating, pergolas, and a service sink. So they are actually going to run plumbing out to there as well. And you can see those. There's a couple of those areas in each building. And here's a rendering of what that might look like. Additionally, they're going to have disc golf or frisbee golf baskets. I think they've got, what, 9 of them around the site, or a few of them, enough of them to play a good game. There will be bike storage, both interior and exterior. There will be an electric car charging station. There will be exterior exercise circuit equipment and a dog park that's for private use by the residents, including a large and small dog area, complete with seating, a drinking fountain for both people and dogs, and training fixtures such as a jump bar and weave pulse. We did that at Dog Loader on our hands here. And an arboretum area that I mentioned at the north end of the site that will have some outdoor seating and lush plantings. And a bike trail connection to the major bike trail system. This is the Frankfurt Square Park District Trail that eventually meanders south to the Old Plank Road Trail, I believe.
And how does that factor in? How does that come into the trail?
So it is, I believe that's through here, right past the dog park. It'll go south and it'll meet up with where it goes just north of the single-family residential and south of the existing townhomes. So let me pull up this here. So it's hard to see because this green line goes right over it. But the existing trail runs along basically this line here and goes down. And so they're gonna match up with it going right back here.
It's probably going to be a switchback. They've got a lot of grade in there, so we're waiting for them to get into engineering to actually see what that design will be.
So the dog park, that's going to be located on the most southern tip of the project? So that looks like, and those are townhomes right to the east of there, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
there are townhomes along here, and then there's single family down south of the bike trail.
Is there any way of considering moving the dog park to the other side so they're not right in the townhome's backyard?
There's an easement, you can't. There's an easement for the pump station.
No, he was saying switching it to the north side, but that's detention. That's all detention area.
And that detention area, is that intended to be permanent?
You want to show them the landscaping of the detention, of the dog park?
So there is landscaping around here. There is a landscape buffer between the project and the residential townhomes.
It'll be fenced as well.
It can be fenced as well. Okay, a couple other quick things. I know we already mentioned a couple of these, but there's a lot of open space. In fact, they have over 4 acres and probably quite a bit more with the land basing as well. And the outdoor terraces that we mentioned over the garages, as you can see here, they've shown a couple different seating and canopy type things on there. I'm sure there's plenty of different events that could be held out there. And lastly, they have their own private balconies as well, and some even have 2 balconies, and some even have their own private terraces. And Paula will talk more about those and show some pictures.
You want to talk about your lighting?
Sure. Yep. Really quickly, lighting, they have provided us a photometric plan, and they've indicated that they're going to adequately light the parking lots. There's not going to be any light spillage onto other properties, and they've provided decorative light fixtures. We've asked the applicant to add a couple more wall sconce type fixtures to the building to give it a little bit more character, and again, to make it a little bit more decorative. Trash enclosures, there will be an interior trash room for the tenants to dispose of their waste, and the management company will handle the trash collection from the trash room to the outdoor enclosures, and they will be constructed with materials that match the building. They're also going to have sturdy gates, I'm sure, and show you where those are at on the site. So one trash enclosure for building number 2 will be right outside the garage here. The other one is up in this corner here, so they're a little out of the way, and there's opportunities for landscaping around both of them as well. And like I said, they will match the building too. I believe that brings us.
Stephanie, you had mentioned, if I heard you right, an electric charging station? Or are there more than one, or what's the plan?
There'll be several. There'll be several.
Good job. I wanted to briefly sort of tag on to Stephanie's comments about amenities, because I think it speaks to some of the comments I was making earlier about how the market has changed, especially since the subprime mortgage lending crisis. When I speak to a lot of the developers, and we've been looking at several different properties in town for residential developments, condo financing has become very difficult. The comments that I received that if someone wants to put up a condo, they have to have the at least 80% or 90% of those units sold before they actually begin construction. So this is what's kind of steering, I think, the market right now, not only in Tinley Park, but in other communities, to start to look at rental housing versus ownership. Any of us that have millennial children, you could probably speak to them too in terms of what they're looking for. I know both of my children live in rental housing in Chicago, and yet they can afford to buy some homes if they wanted to. So it's somewhat of a marketplace dictate, and in terms of the market studies that I have seen, and the applicant will certainly speak to theirs, Tinley Park has an extremely low vacancy rate for apartments. I know Stephanie has made her personal testimony in terms of looking for rental housing when she moved here from Kansas. So That's one of the things that's pushing towards some type of rental housing development on this site, and that there is a need that hasn't been adequately addressed so far. But my own personal view on this, in my years, I've had over 35 years of planning, one of the concerns a lot of times with rental housing is the upkeep and maintenance of these facilities. And my experience in dealing with this kind of development of rental housing is to look at ways to make sure that we can maintain long-term the quality that we develop in the very beginning, that they look as good in 10, 15, 20, 30 years longer as they do when we first put them in. And one of the things that I have found as working as a government employee and had the opportunity to try and shape these developments is to look at the quality of materials and the development and the amenities on the project. So this is one of the things that Stephanie and I did as we did review these projects, this particular project, was to increase and include the number of luxury amenities on the property to somewhat ensure there's always a rate of return a developer owner is going to want. And so as you start to drive up the cost of those amenities and the maintenance of those amenities, you can guarantee a certain rate of return from that owner by having a significant amount of amenities or quality of development for them to maintain. So let's get into architecture. This is the project that we were presented with in the beginning. And sometimes I like to show these and sometimes I don't, because I always run the fear of someone saying, oh, I like that better. But we felt that we could do better. We felt that we could get much better quality masonry structures, an actual roof line. So we worked with the applicant to move forward with better architecture than we felt this was. So this was a second rendition of the proposal. We felt it was an improvement, but we wanted to see better articulation of the building, some modulation of the roof because of the expanse of the building. We were concerned about the roof line. We wanted to see a better demarcation of the entryways so it was obvious where the entryways are. And we certainly wanted to make sure that the parking floor was screened and somewhat mitigated in terms of its height. So we got to this, and some of this is a little subtle, but what we began to see, or what we were able to negotiate, is underlaying roof line from the street face as well as the west face, because actually the west face of both these buildings will function as the entrance. But this is what you will see from the street. You have an obvious demarcation of where the entry is, because the roof is higher and the brick color denotes where the entrance is. The other thing we felt really strongly about and fell in love with was the floor-to-ceiling windows. They really added to the overall luxury, I guess, feeling of the building. As you start to look, and I think probably the architect is going to do a better job of this, but you start to look at windows like this from floor to ceiling, and that top floor has 13-foot high ceilings. So it's very modern, reminiscent of some of the luxury apartments that you might see in Chicago. And the other issue was the amount of balcony space. We had them increase that significantly. So as Stephanie mentioned, we have 1 to 2 balconies per unit. Some units have quite an extensive roof garden, if you want to call it, space, and I'll show you that in a minute. So here in the front, for example, this part of the building steps back. So this section here, they have a roof deck. Floor-to-ceiling windows, as I mentioned. And there are no HVAC units to hide on the roof or on the ground because they've been built into the wall and painted to match the brick color.
So each unit has its own individual HVAC unit?
So let me ask the question since that was opened up. This reminds me of a hotel HVAC system. Is that what it is?
No, it's basically, the hotels are usually under windows. These are vertical PTACs. They're basically self-contained. They have both the heating and cooling units in one piece, but it's a vertical, so you get the same ductwork unlike a hotel where you just have it blow out into the room, this actually has like a furnace where you would have ductwork to it.
But I don't remember seeing, and I'm sorry, Paul, but I'm going to
No
use
problem.
your term. I don't remember seeing luxury apartments in Chicago having units like this. Usually it's a water-based unit, or it's,
I mean, if you're dealing with, 20-story building, yeah, you would look at it.
I understand on the water, but on the others, they have their own furnace in there, and then they have a CI unit usually on the roof or somewhere.
Then you gotta deal with all the conduits there. The nice thing about these units are, maintenance-wise, they can have extra compressors, whatever, on site. And if something goes out, all they do is replace that one unit with the existing one. So maintenance is a issue of maintenance as well as efficiency.
But then as I'm looking at them and I'm seeing metal grates
But it's gonna be,
reminiscent of a hotel, I don't see luxury apartments here, guys.
yeah.
We're just talking, it's a
Right,
workshop,
right.
but I'm letting you know, this HVAC, and I'm not an expert
Did you
in
bring a
it.
material? I don't know where the material board is. Okay, so we could, at the workshop or the public hearing, he's going to have
Like
a
a brick,
material
yeah.
board. Could you
Yeah.
bring, because you were telling us that would be
Right.
painted?
Right.
So maybe you can give an example so he can see what that would
Yeah.
actually look like.
And are you saying that each room will have its
No,
own
no, you have one per
thermostat?
unit, just one per unit.
One thermostat per unit, or one
Yeah.
thermostat per room?
One thermostat per unit.
And
It's like
again,
like you would
if
have.
I'm thinking a luxury apartment, if I go downtown, and I use Paul and Stephanie's words here, because I live downtown, and I think a luxury apartment, when I go look at those, or when the kids go look at those, as Paula talked about, my kids, they've got thermostats per room in these luxury apartments. They don't have one in the entire unit here. I'm just talking with you on the HVAC. My own personal opinion, I think this was reminiscent of a hotel system. I understand it's this way, yeah, vertical instead of horizontal underneath the window, and that you've got one thermostat in there, and you're going to tell me that you're going to heat or cool the
Yeah, you
1,600.
basically can get a 5-ton air conditioning unit in one of those PTACs, the same as which is the maximum size of a house furnace.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So in terms of the unit count, and I think, Peter, you had asked about this before, so we have 44 two-bedroom, two-bath. Those range in areas between 1,286 to 1,356. We have 4 two-bedroom, two-bath, and a study. That's 1,616. And then we have 4 one-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and 20 one-bedroom, 1 bath. These all exceed our minimum size requirements. One bedroom is 800, and a two-bedroom is at 1,000. So you can see that they all exceed what code would require.
I presume there's been some study and anticipated computation of expected rental for these particular units in terms of average
I
rents?
think that would be something that we really can't ask that. That would be something that if the developer wants to speak to that, he can.
I'm home.
So on the first floor, you can see one of the things that Stephanie was discussing is some green landscaping, in other words, like vines and so forth, would be trained along the wall. This is a ground floor parking wall. Now, in this design, they weren't able, because the files got too big, to actually replicate what the landscape plan is. So this is far more sparse. Far less landscaping, far more sparse than what the actual landscaping is. But we asked them to render this for us so we can get an idea what this green landscaping would look like. So these are more elevations, and again, I'm gonna let Scott sort of get down into the detail of all of those, but for us, what we wanted to see is something that broke up the expanse of the each facade through the articulation and the insets and outsets of the building, an undulating roof line, and the modulating berm across the front. And there is a kind of pergola structure over both entrances on the east and west side. Can't really blow it up here, but it's a wood trellis over the entrances. You can see that on the front and the back. This kind of gives you, we have a SketchUp model. I think, are we doing that this evening? You brought that?
I don't have an updated one.
if it can't load on there. We have, these are SketchUp models, but, you know, it's, we'll see if we can't do that for the public hearing. But what I was mentioning about the curvature of the street, you can kind of get an idea that you just see a portion of that facade at any one given time. This is looking north. It's the same facade that Stephanie indicated. In that peaked area, you start to get a sense of scale of what we're talking about in terms of terraces. The terrace that's over the garage, I believe is 20 by 30.
Over the garage is 4,000.
Oh,
4,000 square feet.
4,000 square feet. Yeah, I had it written on here, but I've got so much. Oh, 20. The outside in units of each building has terraces measuring 23 by 31.
Those are the small.
Those are the smaller ones. The large one is 47 feet by 93. So here, this is a common terrace for everyone to enjoy. That is, what did I tell you? I just told you.
47 by 93.
Thank you. 47 by 93. And then individually, like these in units, will have wraparound terraces
That one's
and
like
balconies.
826 units.
Yeah. 47 by 93 was the big one. And the smaller one is 23 by 31.
How big are the balconies on the units?
Sorry.
How big are the balconies on the units?
Balconies, I believe, are 6 by, I can't remember, 14 or 15 feet.
All of them are the same size?
Most of them are the same.
With the exception of those
As they run up
ones in
and
the
down.
middle, yeah.
Well, like the corner units, we do have more of an L shape of balconies. We also have on the street face. We also have at the main entrance. We have at the first floor. There's larger terraces on that first floor, and then they go up to regular balconies above that. But on the ends there, you also have these L-shaped balconies.
Right, I was just looking at the regular balconies. I want to make sure at least you could put some furniture out there.
Okay.
6 by 15 or 6 by 12, you
I think
said?
it's 6 by. I have to go back and look.
6 deep is what I remember,
Right.
and 13 or more.
13.
13.
Okay. Thank you.
So one of the considerations, and it took a lot of research because it was sort of confusing me personally, in that when you look at the R5 zoning district, which is the underlying zoning district, I know it's a PUD, but you always look at the bulk regulations of the underlying zoning district. R5 has a maximum height of 35 feet. Actually, the tallest building in our multifamily districts is 40. And yet, the existing townhomes, these here, are 62. It- Excuse me. Ownership is irrelevant in this situation in terms of what's built according to the district.
Why is it irrelevant?
Yeah.
So when this was originally approved in 2000, in 2000 I mentioned that there was a substantial PUD mentioned. And at that time, there was an allowance for an increase in building height from 3 stories to 4 stories, and that's what they are, and that's what these were built as, along with underground parking underneath it. And then later on in the agreement, it actually mentions 56 feet in height. And yet subsequent to that, these buildings were built at 62 feet. So I think, I can't guess what the thinking was necessarily. I think there probably was an architectural product brought in. They felt that it was something they felt that they could approve. For me, what was important is to look at the scale of this building in relationship to these buildings, because this is what's already on the landscape as we see it now. As I mentioned, these are at 62 feet, and again, kind of depends on what you want to consider ground level, but you know, it is somewhat undulating in those buildings as well. In the proposed structure, we'll go back to that. At the tallest peak over the entrances, the actual top of that roof is 71 feet. But when we define height in building heights, it's defined as the mean height. So you look at the slope of the roof and you look at the midpoint of that slope. So in that case, the tallest roof would be 65. The main ridge, this, I would say probably the most predominant thing you see out there, this ridge here, if I can get my cursor, all along here, is at 64. So it's 2 feet taller than the existing condos that are out there. This is some pictures. So when you start to judge height, to me, it's not the raw number, it's its perception from the street and from the pedestrian scale. And that's where Stephanie was talking about the setbacks, I think, come to play. Because you certainly don't want to overpower the pedestrian or the streetscape. So in her discussion, she talked about sort of a range of setback and being somewhat consistent to what you're seeing out there. So if people are trying to imagine, it's kind of hard to imagine sometimes what you're going to be looking at. I think this gives you a fair sense of what the impact that's going to be on the street. Although this building is much larger in bulk, it's much wider. Although, again, as I mentioned, the benefit is that it is on the curve.
Paul, can I just interject there?
Sure.
We're talking about setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
These buildings average 24 to 30 feet, so that's 27 feet plus or minus 3 feet, about an 11% variance.
These existing ones are 24
Yes.
to 34, yes.
Correct. So an average of 27 plus or minus 3 feet,
Mm-hmm.
a variance of 11%.
Mm-hmm.
That's rounded to 10%.
Mm-hmm.
What you're asking us, because you're talking about trying to keep everything equal,
Mm-hmm.
you're asking us to go to 14 feet of setback in some instances, all the way up
We
to...
can always go less, we just can't go more by the code.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
but to keep consistent with the units around there, you're coming in with these plans,
Mm-hmm.
a 14 to 36-foot setback.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 25-foot mean, plus or minus 11, or a variance of about over 40%.
What I would suggest, Peter, in looking at that, it's really not so much the average, because the way the urban overlay district, because it's encouraging buildings coming up to as close to the street as possible, or really the intent of that district is to make sure the automobile isn't dominating the streetscape, and so that gets into parking areas. But in terms of setbacks, there's a maximum of setback of 20, because again, it's trying to scooch it up. So the existing buildings, maximum are 34, so they're 14 feet back further. The ones that are being proposed here are 16, so there's really only a 2-foot difference in terms of the maximum setbacks. Because 14 meets code. Anything under that meets code. So if we're using it to kind of compare, again, we're not in a straight zoning issue, we're in a situation of the PUD. And when you're reviewing these exceptions, I'm suggesting that you look at the exception in the context of what is already constructed out there. So right now you have pretty much all the buildings out there are non-conforming with respect to the basic underlying zoning district with respect to height and with respect to setback. So the existing structures are 2 feet less in height, and they're 2 feet, in terms of overall, the average, and they're 2 feet less in setback. So you're looking at me quizzically. So
Yeah, because I don't see those numbers at all. I mean,
well, 62 feet. 60. Oh, I'm sorry, my math is
6
bad.
feet.
I'm sorry. 62 feet is existing in height, and well, I guess it's the mean height of the tallest building is 65, and the main ridge is 64. So that's only a 2-foot difference. Existing buildings, these buildings are 62,
right,
and the main ridge of the new building is 64.
but you're going at that 62 feet in height for these existing buildings. Isn't that at the peaks of those roofs?
No, I think it's probably the main ridge. You said you actually...
The main ridge.
Yeah, the main ridge of the building. So it's still looking, do we have another picture here? It's kind of hard to see on here. So the main ridge, not looking at the dormers. So I'm comparing main ridge to main ridge.
So you're telling me that the dormer's even taller than the existing
Yes,
buildings?
I drew those buildings, so I
How
actually
tall,
saw
how
the
tall is the
plans.
main, how tall is the main ridge in these buildings?
65 feet on that one.
And what we're proposing is 71.
Well, 71 is only in
At the-
the middle.
I understand, but that's the ridge,
That's
or that's the
the middle
peak,
ridge.
that's the peak. Yeah.
When I kind of look at a scale of a building, I'm looking at the predominant horizontal line.
Okay.
So the predominant horizontal line on the proposed building is 64, and the predominant horizontal line on these is 62. Is that correct? So there's 2-foot difference there. And then in terms of setback, these buildings are 14 feet out of conformance, maximum. Its maximum setbacks is 14 feet.
Well, instead of saying maximum, why don't we go with what they are setback? They're setback 24 to 30 feet.
Right, but it's I guess it's the worst case scenario is
I understand, but the buildings are setback 24 to 30 feet. That's what they are, correct?
Sure.
And then this is going to be 14 to 36 feet.
But 14 is within code.
I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah. I think it also is just, again, looking at this in the context of the whole PUD, some of the existing structures that exist on Greenway do have some curve to it. And I think that's, if you drive out there and kind of look at it in that sense, kind of gives you an idea how that curvature mitigates the scale and setback of those buildings. The same thing I would say is happening here. So in terms of exception, Stephanie was mentioning some exceptions in hers. The exception that you would need to consider would be building height. So I think at this point we have an exception on building setbacks, not parking setbacks, they meant that. Building setbacks and building height. The other structure on site is the clubhouse. I'll come back and talk about materials actually in a minute. I was hoping you brought the building materials today. One of the things, this was the original design of the clubhouse. Actually, do you have the other original in here? No, the other one, the very beginning one we looked at. I might, for grins, I'm going to bring that next time just so you can see where we started. There was a completely different architecture, and we felt that it wasn't consistent with the architecture that they're proposing. We wanted to have some connection to the existing building, so not only with material but also in design. So, and we also wanted to make sure, if you look at the site plan, you can see the clubhouse is oriented so the entrances are on the sides, so they're coming from their main structures.
Paula, we don't have this current one, do we?
No.
You should have it on the PowerPoint here.
No, it's
No, we
strange.
before then.
This wasn't in our packet because it's updated, but we haven't been sent this one yet.
Right, but you didn't see it on, you should be able to see this.
I should see it.
Okay, so, yeah, because this is some of the things we've asked them to change. But they always had the entrances to the clubhouse on the north and south side. And our concern was that, again, we need to design for the street face, and I didn't want the front, what I would consider the front facing the right-of-way, to look like the side of the building. So they did add this. So the roof sort of reflects what an entrance would look like. It's not the entrances are on the side. So you can see the old version on the top and the new version on the bottom. And that is 19 feet in height. Okay. And I think we're going to hear a lot more from the applicant, if you're ready, or if you have more questions for me, or if you want to.
Do you want to talk about the building materials or no?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said you were ready to
They're all
talk to that.
masonry. I'm going to let the architect discuss
Okay.
that, if you will.
Yeah, I
if you
think
want
it's,
to.
we'll give
When it comes-
your voice a rest.
Yes,
and we'll
thank you.
let the petitioner fill us in on some more.
Good evening, my name is Scott Shelvis. As far as building materials, we're looking at architectural precast with embedded thin brick on the facade. So we would have a mixture of a reddish brick to kind of match up with the existing condos, and then also a yellowish brick to kind of break up the length of the building. The lower section, we're looking at a stamped and stained precast at that point, so it'll be part of the panel itself to give it a stone look.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Since did you build the buildings, the condo buildings?
I didn't build them,
You were
but
the
I was the
architect?
architect on them.
what is the material that's used in those buildings?
On those were brick and block.
And on the firehouse that's over there, are you
The
familiar?
firehouse, I didn't do the firehouse, but I
I
did.
understand, but do you, I'm sure you've driven by it. Do you know
Yeah.
what that's made out of as well?
That I'm not
It's
sure.
brick, it's brick.
Yeah, right.
Why aren't we using brick on this?
One, for economics, I mean, as far as speed of time of construction, you're also looking at quality of material and quality of, you're doing with a masonry product that is a true brick that you're going to have on the exterior. It's going to be done in a shop, under controlled environment, put up, and then you're basically, the way that those condo buildings were built, you couldn't do those today, the same way today. They were basically, the mason who built them from the deck up. So he put up the precast, leaned over the wall, put the block and brick up. Problem is now you have to have a water barrier. So he would end up having to put up the block, stop, basically build the whole building up with the block, then come back on the outside, scaffold the whole building up to put the waterproofing on and then the brick on. So you're talking about doubling the mason's time to do the project, also a matter of scheduling. So it's more economical, it's also much more efficient, and it gives you a better product.
Was there something about consistency? I know we
It's
asked you
consistent
that
because it's
same
basically
question.
you're dealing with a factory,
Product, right, understood.
it's very controlled environment versus an
In
uncontrolled
terms of
environment.
color and things? I mean,
Color,
yes, the same
it's a
question.
real brick, so you're buying, we were looking at Endicott brick, so the clubhouse would be probably a brick and blocks construction. We're using the same brick for the building, it's just gonna be a thin brick.
Right, so why don't they use this on homes? I'm not an architect.
Why not? Actually, if you look at, I think it's ATMI actually built a home doing that.
ATMI.
ATMI is a precast company. That's one of the companies we're looking at. They actually built a home out in, I think it's Bolingbrook. They did a test building right before the market died, back in like 2006, 2007. They actually built a home, precast home with the brick, embedded brick.
But could you understand if I owned one of those condos there, and I spent a lot of money on that condo,
Mhm.
I bought it because I think in this area,
Yeah.
it's one of the best looking, we go to the term luxury, strongest construction from my viewpoint. I mean, if I look at it, it's solid. And then I'm gonna come home every day and I'm gonna go past, as I called it earlier, motels, because that's what motels use, is
No,
precast.
motels, no, actually, motels do not use, motels, if you look at motels and hotels, they are frame construction, usually standard frame construction. They'll put a thin brick or a nail on stone on the bottom. We're talking about a precast panel that's, I think when I talked to the precaster, we're talking about 6,000 PSI concrete. So basically, it's water, it will not have an issue of water and penetration. The panels are horizontal; they're not vertical like you would think of an industrial panel. So you're not going to see the seams, vertical seams, like you would think that you would see in an industrial building when you're dealing with precast.
And it's type 3 construction.
It is. It meets. It's basically it's actually more like almost it's a precast. So your solid precast bearing walls and your solid precast exterior. So. I mean, I've done the same building. I've done an 8-story building in precast. I think it was up in Glenview, several years, or probably about 10 years ago. It's a beautiful building, high-end. That was actually a very high-end luxury condo building. And we're talking about using the same kind of situation there that we're doing down here.
We could try and get some pictures of that, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no problem. We will definitely get you. We can get you
some.
some examples and some locations that you can take a look at.
Is height an issue for this type of material? Is that?
No, actually, since the panels are going to be horizontal versus vertical, so we're not going to have we're not dealing with a 40-foot panel. We're dealing with a panel that's probably, at the most, we're dealing with a 13 or 14-foot panel. With panel at these higher ends in the peaks. So that's not a problem with the precaster.
Utilizing materials that you're planning to use, that you're proposing to use, what's the approximate cost per unit versus the cost per unit of a brick building like this? Just ballpark.
It's really, actually, the precast is going to, in the cost-wise, the precast will probably be a little more than the brick and block, but you're dealing with It's the economics is time. Because if you're not, that's more of a carry cost than a actual, because you're not dealing with
But
the
you're looking-
time frame of it.
As the investor, I want to know, what is each of those units going to cost?
Okay, well, right now, we've gotten just the precast price, just the precast shell, nothing else. That was at $7.5 million.
No, per unit, just the per.
I don't know, but I couldn't tell you per cost.
Okay, thank you.
But I know this, the shell itself was $7.5 million.
Okay.
Okay. I think they have a prepared presentation that they're ready to make.
What's that? All right, thank you.
You have it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I actually don't need it. It's for these guys. Yeah, the visual aids are not my strong suit. You can. I think that Scott and will address, and Steve will address all of the pictures. So you don't. I don't really need it. You can just put the development up if you want. My name is Andrea Crowley with the law firm of Griffin and Gallagher. I'm here on behalf of Carly Mayer, who is KJM Development Vandenberg. It's a joint venture. We also brought the rest of our team here, which is our landscape architect, Steve Gregory, and Scott Shelvis, who's done a lot of work in Tinley. Actually, he did the Brookside condo development over there with John Barrett in Blackwater, who is also a client of ours, so I feel like we've been living with this project in my office for a long time, too. This project, as Paula did a great job, and I want to thank staff, because we've been working on this for over a year with the village and with staff, and various iterations of what this looked like and what it, ended up looking like. I think it came out great, and we really do appreciate the hard work that they've put in and that all of you have put in terms of listening tonight. What I would say is that this project is on a piece of property that currently supports the zoning and supports the use. So we're not asking for any amendment to the density, the use. I mean, a developer could come in tomorrow and build those 16-unit buildings and rent them out, for that matter, and there would be not much that there would be nothing that the village could do. So we're not asking for any deviations in that respect. What we're asking for really, and we hope that you agree, is that this looks better than what those did, that we're allowing, by doing the two buildings and spending all of this time on the architecture, we're allowing significant amount of green space and amenities that wouldn't exist otherwise. And in doing that, we're allowing this to be a product that actually garners those rents. And if you look at the similar project in Orland, which I know has come up, there's been a lot of social media and things about this, that the vacancy rate there is 3%. So it's nearly all rented. And in fact, I actually reached out to Orland about this, and Kerry Freiling, who's the developer over there, has offered to show those to anybody who might be interested from the Planning Commission, if you're interested to see what they might look like when they're done. So it's an offer that if anyone, and I mean that sincerely, that we're willing to sort of accommodate, a tour if that's helpful. They have a very low vacancy rate. They're getting the rent they projected. We ran all sorts of studies. Carly is here. She did hired a professional company. It's Reese. It's the company who is the major player in terms of market research for real estate. Paula has that. It was sent to her today, I believe. I don't know that you have it, but it is with the village and it's available. And when they ran their studies, this was the area that they thought was the marketable area. It's very difficult, as Paula said, to get financing to build condos because the market just isn't there for them anymore, so the lenders aren't lending on it. Like I said, this really is about the design of the building, and other than that, the approvals are already in place. So we're trying to make a product that looks great. We think that we can market it. We wouldn't be doing it otherwise. It's not something that we're looking to build housing that we're not going to, that we're in it for the profit too. And so we think we can get these rentals. There will be an on-site management company. We need to take care of it or we don't make our money back. So these amenities are great. They're what's happening in the high-end developments, not just in Tinley Park or in the south suburbs, but around the area and around the country, quite frankly. I'm not an architect, I'm not a designs person, so if there's questions, I'm here. Carly is here to answer them. I think she's willing to talk about the studies if anybody has questions about those. I know that Steve is available as well to talk about the the landscape architecture, which we've spent a lot of time on, and I think that it really distinguishes what we can do with 2 buildings versus all of the concrete that would be required in the existing approval. If we do those 16-unit buildings, there's going to be a lot of concrete. This really does open up space for green space and ultimately, I think, a better-looking product. And that's really what we're here tonight, is to hope that, we can get an approval for a project that we think looks great, that we think staff has done a great job on, and with our architect and with our landscape architect as well. And we're here for questions, but we think they did a great job. So I don't want to keep everybody here till midnight tonight with a sort of rehashing.
We're used to it.
All right, well, you've indicated the market study was just given to Paula, then we...
Paula has the market study, yes.
That's
Yep.
something we can take a look at, I think,
Absolutely.
before...
Yeah, we hope you do. She got it late today. I think Carly finally sent
All
it,
right.
so it's available.
And I know Peter had some questions about some construction materials. Before we have the public hearing, I take it we'll have some samples present for people if they want to see them at the public hearing in terms of construction materials. Hopefully have a better landscape plan than what I'm looking at now.
Yep.
Okay.
I think Carly wanted to speak to it.
Yeah.
My name's Carly Mayer, and I'm a developer on this project. As Andrea and Paula both mentioned, that this is already zoned and ready to go for 9 16-unit buildings. But doing some research and looking at the, this current market and the whole U.S. for that matter, it just doesn't seem to be the right product right now for anyone. Everyone's going towards, bigger buildings with more green space and a ton more amenities. That drives up rent and just makes the area a lot better looking. So, like Paula mentioned, all the amenities that we're including, pools, clubhouse, library, exercise areas inside and outside, tying into that bike trail. I know everyone's very into health and fitness these days, so I think that'll be a big positive. And then just all the outdoor space with the grilling areas and fire pits for people to spend outside. I know we live in Chicago and you don't get that much time outside, so during those times I think people will really utilize that space. So any questions that anyone has, let us know and we're happy to answer them.
I have a question. Since Andrea brought up about Orland Park, you mentioned a 3% vacancy rate. Now, is any of that subsidized renting?
It is not.
That's not something that can be considered.
Well, she brought it up. That's why I asked. She said she brought up the Orland Park.
That building is a market rate building, to the best of my knowledge. I am not affiliated with the Village of Orland Park. I just, in terms of their proximity and a similar product, it was a question I posed to their village. And to the best of my knowledge, that is not true. But I have no basis for that knowledge.
Yeah. I think it'll be helpful, Mark.
No independent basis. No
Yeah,
independent basis.
I think it'll be helpful, Mark, once we see the market study to maybe get a better handle on some of that as well.
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Did you have more?
Oh,
Go ahead, Ken. I have others, but no, go ahead.
Just as far as the current plan, is this intended as a single-phase development or one building and then the other?
yes, so that's the main reason that we're looking to the precast, because if we do that, we can put both buildings up at the same time with the amenities all going in at the same time, 10 to 12 month construction period, so very quick.
Okay. So some of the language, and I apologize, I was looking for the exact phrasing that caught my eye, but we focused a lot on the amenities, which I understand helps drive up what you can get for a unit.
Definitely.
The amenities that were listed on there, it says including but not limited to. I swear, I thought I saw in there somewhere that was a proposed list of amenities, but the ones that are listed in there, are those the...
I think the executive summary says extras, but then back in the site plan, we actually list them.
Yeah, so
Right,
let me
so-
get to the point. Are these amenities such as this, or are these the amenities?
These are the amenities,
Okay.
but,
And-
you
and
know,
are
we
they
might think of an
intended to-
idea and go above and beyond when the time comes, but these are where we are right now.
Right. And so are they intended to be part of the opening? They're going to be there from the start? It's not a phase two?
Right, exactly, yep, everything all at the same time.
The clubhouse will be.
The clubhouse, yep. The clubhouse will go up when the buildings go up. Everything will be together.
Great. I noticed in the print of the actual floor plans, these hallways, they seem very long, straight hallways, right? Except for the kind of curve at the end. Without going into a ton of detail about specific building materials, what is the intention for the construction of the hallways?
Scott.
Just as far as what are the interior hallways going to be built of? Is it precast like the rest of the?
No, actually, the hallways will probably be they're fire rated, so we're going to have to be masonry.
Okay.
The non-load bearing walls will probably be masonry, probably a lightweight aerated concrete with drywall on top of it.
Okay. I know quite, judging from the multiple iterations of the exterior, a lot of effort was put into breaking it up, and I know from experience the long straight hallway, and just how that can feel like a tunnel, and it can actually give a very low value feel.
Well, we actually do have openings. If you look at some of the spots, we do actually have gathering areas in those, which of those are large area, and those are actually are fairly large rooms that you actually could, spaces that you can end up putting furniture out there for gathering of the people. So that will break up that longer hallways. And there are certain areas at the elevator that's also broken up. So that's like midway, so there's, we are trying to break up that distance as much as possible. In the final design, we may, recess some doors and things like that to break that up.
Is there any?
That's
You may end up doing also stuff with the ceiling itself that will break that up as well.
okay. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed in the print, and I've seen similar construction where you feel like you're in a tunnel.
Right.
And if there was anything that could be done to, kind of alter that feel a little bit.
We'll definitely look at it. If you want to give, maybe like sheet 3.2 and 3.3. Yeah, the color ones. As you can see, we do have it broken up. We have a little gathering space at the break, and also the area by the elevator is open. And then if you go to 3.3.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
So we are trying to break it up, but we can also try to break it up at the doors itself. We also got to be, cognizant of the ADA requirements, making sure we have clear spaces and things like that.
Yeah.
And if you look at,
much like Paula was referencing the fact that the building's on a curve and the linear view of it there, even though you have the recesses for the gathering
Right.
areas and all that, when you're standing at one end of the hallway, you can't see those. So your sight line is just straight down the hall. So
Well, the building is curved. Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
it's just a suggestion.
we'll definitely take a look at it.
I don't want to belabor that point too much. A couple other quick points here just to run through them. The height, we're talking
Yes.
about how the original submission did not have the subterranean parking.
That's
So
right.
I'm interested to know how much of the additional height was as a result of lifting it up, or
You're about 13 feet for that alone. And then also with the negotiations, we end up raising up the ends of the building and the center. We went from 9-foot to 13, 14-foot ceilings, and I think 14 foot at the very center and 13 at the end. So we picked up several feet there, plus another 13 feet with the parking.
Okay, so if I could rephrase that, is it fair to say the original design would not require a substantial deviation for height?
It would be a whole story less than the buildings at Brookside.
Okay.
Well, but then remember,
But you
it's
have
kind of crazy,
garages.
the R5 is 35 feet. So,
Yes.
it's kind of weird, but we pushed him to do that because I wanted to get the 13-foot tall ceilings, and I also wanted to
Right.
get that big grand entrance at the beginning. So that was part of the negotiation. So it's a good point, and we sort of, I guess, drove the
Yeah, and
exception.
that's kind of what I'm getting to. I want to understand what's driving the request, right? And
It's
how
also
much of
getting-
it is to meet, the village's interest in trying to spruce it up. So
At an expense as
Right.
well.
It
'cause
also
we heard-
it also eliminates the garages.
They were not happy.
Okay, so last question was with respect to, it's intended to be 100% rental,
That's correct.
right? Other developments, and we're not talking about other developments, but I will just say there have been considerations about when the market changes again, the potential of converting some all to condo. And I'm just interested whether that is something that
That would be-
had been contemplated. I was looking at just the design and imagining in my head whether it's even practical to consider going that route.
It's not currently contemplated, but it certainly would be possible. These are each individual functioning units. I mean, you could do a condo conversion if the market dictated. It's not something that we're contemplating at the moment.
And we know they have individual HVAC systems too.
They have individual HVACs, individual water heaters, so.
Yeah, the units are set up in such a way that they could be condos if that, were
If the market drove you in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, we've all seen how this market has changed both ways. I mean, it used to be all apartments, and everything switched to condos, and then now back again. It's just in, 15 years or so.
But this design does not preclude.
Okay.
I think, did you still had more presentation, Carly?
Well, yeah, I can just talk a little bit about the, rents that we're looking for.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sure everyone is, wondering just an idea of per month rent per unit. And we're looking for somewhere around, based on our market studies, somewhere around $1,500 to $2,500, depending on 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, per month.
And this is all included in your market study that you gave to Paula?
I just have a general market study. It doesn't have the exact rents that we're looking for. It's just a general,
That's what-
kind of what's going on in the area.
Your market study, though, shows what other people are getting for rent.
It does show what everyone else in the area is getting for rents. And just an example, Edgewater, which has no amenities, that was built in the 70s, if I remember correctly, they're getting about $1,000 a month per rent per unit. So we think with a brand new building, everything upgraded and all those amenities, we think that there's no reason that we couldn't get a couple $100 more a month for 1 bedrooms and about $1,000.
Can I ask you another question about your market study? And I know we're going to get a copy of it, but I just want to anticipate that we're going to get this. In parking and excess, the applicant does not anticipate the need for 2 net spaces per unit, especially since there are 1-bedroom units. In addition, the development will be marketed to young professionals that are seeking access to public transportation. As far as I know, the public transportation is quite a ways either towards
Yep, so it's a
Mokina
mile and
or
a half.
towards- yeah.
Yep. So a mile and a half to the 179th Street
So
station,
how
and
would they
then,
get there if they didn't have a car?
well, bikes, and if there's 1 bedroom. I live in the city and people ride their bikes all the time, but.
Understood, but is that in your market study?
That is, the market study that I sent to Paula is strictly just about what's in the area, what they're getting for rents, vacancy rates, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, there's, in this staff report, there's talk about market research. I'm trying to figure out who did the market research and if that's.
Well, we
what's
could
in
get that
this.
all to you, that's just not what I had sent her.
If you, that would appreciate it, because I want to get a better understanding of how you're making these
Peter,
distinctions.
just to let you know, 80th Avenue was planned for improvements that would include a bike trail. And actually, the village is looking at a similar bike rental plan, similar to the Divvy bikes. We've actually been looking at that as a citywide prospect or initiative.
And that's-
So there is bike storage provided. in-
Yes, bike storage, electric car charging stations, because I know a lot of people are moving to that.
And I think to Pete's point, what he's saying is there's only one sidewalk there that extends from the property to Paws, and then there's no other sidewalks.
Right. And Scott, if
In
I'm remembering
any
correctly,
other
we did have
direction.
2.5 parking spots, which is required, and then we just land banked 72 spots, so we have enough parking.
I understand it, but I mean, you guys are making comments, or somebody is in the staff report that you're close to train stations, and you're really not that close to train
Okay.
stations. And so, I mean,
I appreciate your concern.
That's why I'm asking about this more. I'm really interested in seeing the market research that you guys have done. I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I got a question. Will that's third party, that study, the analytics that you have on the market? The study that you have, is that a third party?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's on rentals. Is there information impact study, school districts, taxing body? There's metro studies for this as far as what this development will do? Or how it will?
Well, the
affect
reason why
the
there isn't is
analytics?
because the densities and the total unit counts have already been approved. So none of that is changing.
What about at the school districts with what's going on around here? Do we have any
It's all
information?
approved.
It's already approved. So all that we're impacting,
So this is just a
Could
site
we get that
plan
information
approval.
then? If it's, so we had something to look at?
look at what? I'm sorry.
As far as the analytics, as far as what was approved. Obviously, the conceptual design was approved, otherwise the
In
developer wouldn't move
2000,
forward.
when it was approved, and actually, I think in the 1990 approval, the densities were already approved, but
Now,
in the
there's gotta be
2000,
There's got to be something more current than 1990.
No, but it's already been
what we're
approved, though.
saying,
You have the census that are,
But what we're saying is that those approvals are there. They're already there. What we're really reviewing as part of the substantial deviation is purely the site plan and the architecture, not in terms of fiscal impact of the project. That's not part of the study.
When would you anticipate breaking ground, knowing that 2000 it was approved? So if we approve it, or it's on the road to being approved in the near future, how many more years could go by potentially?
We plan, if everything goes according to plan, we plan on breaking ground this fall.
Yeah, you had an economic,
And then, what-
crisis, that's why the other one.
Yeah, what's your anticipated length of construction time to?
10 to 12 months with the precast.
Okay. And that would include the center and and all, the amenities, as well as the 2 units, 2 building units. You'd have all the amenities in that
Correct,
time
yes.
period as well, okay.
Can I ask a question, Paula? On the previous approvals that you cite, were there building plans submitted as well?
No, they never got that far.
So it went to where to be approved for the densities that we're talking about?
The village board. The village board approved a substantial deviation of the original PUD to approve 9 16-unit buildings.
Without, were they approved, let me ask the question, were they approved, were they submitted as condos, were they submitted as apartments?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we can do more research. But the type of housing, in terms of its structure of ownership, is not what's under review at this point.
Right, no, I understand, I'm just trying to, you keep going back to this was approved already, and they also go back to this was approved. I'm just trying to figure out what was approved, and you're saying that the densities were approved.
Right.
But no, and nine,
Nine
the row, let's start with the row housing.
16-unit, 9 16-unit. And I think, was Blackhawk still?
Blackwater, yeah, that was actually Blackwater building.
Yeah, I think it
So wouldn't they
was
have
Johnny
submitted
Barrett's
plans
building.
to get this approved?
I was involved in the zoning, because that happened before I was involved in the building plans. We had a basic footprint of the building and knowing generally what the unit count would be, and then the parking underneath. But-
So thank you. So go to staff for a second, or maybe you guys know since you're the bring it up. Can staff find out what exactly was approved back in 1990s and in 2000?
A four-story 16-unit building with parking underground. That is what was approved.
Right, but the plans then must have been, if you knew it was a 4-story, excuse me, just for a second, sir. So if you know that they were 4-story, 16 units buildings.
That's what the ordinance, there's an ordinance that describes that, and that's where we're getting our information. I don't know the ordinance number, but there's an ordinance that was approved in 2000, just like what this one would be. When this goes all the way to the village board, if it's approved, it'll become an ordinance, and in that ordinance, it would specify what the density is, what the unit count is and.
Can we do this just so that there's no, can we pull that ordinance and
Sure,
maybe give it as part of
absolutely.
our package so we know what was approved?
Yeah, I gave some
Okay.
excerpts of it in here, but I can give you the whole thing.
Yeah, if you
Absolutely.
would, that'd be great. Thank you.
And, Ms. Mayor, have you had any other developments that you can speak to in this size and scope?
Not this size, but I have done a couple apartment buildings recently. There's one in Tinley behind, I think it's Tinley, behind Cooperstock on 157th in Harlem, or that's Orland?
Orland, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So 27 units there, and then 65th in Nashville. We just did a 16-unit building, and we're just finishing a 29-unit building, which is in the city of Chicago. We are working on a project of this size in Florida as well.
Okay, any other questions on part of the commissioners for Carly?
Just real quick, or I'm sorry, not for Kylie, but for Paula, the 2014 developments, what was the reasoning why that was quashed?
The 2014, well, it was a pipeline, I believe, they didn't contemplate the pipeline.
Is that noted in the minutes anywhere?
Yeah, it didn't even make it to the village board. But the pipeline, once they saw the pipeline and they were losing units, the economics of the project no longer worked.
Okay, because I went back to August of 2014 and pipeline was never mentioned. It was outstanding items with brick and some fire issues or so. So, I mean, if you could review the August meeting of 2014, and if you can kind of piggyback off of that, it appeared that the developer wanted to bring this to a
It was, what we found is in the staff report, so I think you might remember because you did a lot of research.
it was Stephanie would have known because she was
Yeah,
part
I
of
was
it.
here at the time. A different planner that's no longer with Tinley
Right.
was the lead on that project. And I believe the issue was that subsequent to that August 2014 Planning Commission meeting, they had some of those open items to go back and address. And either their engineer or our engineer said, hey, by the way, make sure those units aren't on this pipeline or, within a certain distance of the pipeline. And I believe at that time, that's when they realized between meetings that there was an issue with that. And I believe, like Paula said, there was just not a viable project because of the reduction in the units. And if it's not a part of the minutes or the staff report, that might be the explanation.
It just goes that there was 3 prior meetings with this development, and then it came to August, and the old planning director, won't bring up her name, had said that there was a lot of outstanding items, and we would have another workshop. There's no information about another workshop, but the developer
That's because
wanted
they
to bring
found
this
out
to...
about the pipeline and it just died.
And they walked away?
Yeah, okay. Anyone else have questions for Carly or the staff before?
I just...
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, prior to a hearing, are we going to see how the pool area is fenced off, or how close it is to that Frankfurt Trail? I'm not really familiar with it, but if you're going to have pedestrian traffic, I would think you'd want to make sure that the pool fence...
The pool is going to be fenced in, and I believe we sent
how high,
Stephanie and
how much
Paula specs
privacy?
on the fence. They should have specs on the fence.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to see that next...
Well, you can consider that a request. I think what Lori's asking, if before we have the public hearing, if, in time for that, if you have some
You can
renderings.
put them in the staff report.
Yeah, okay. Put it in our staff report so we can see what we have.
Well, it's the same.
Are they the
There's
same?
a balcony, there's a pool drawings.
Okay.
This building, there is a.
Can we show it to them on here or no? Or it's on yours?
It's probably on there.
It's one of the ones that are in the original.
I'll make
So
sure
again,
that-
if you look at the floor plan, the pool, the pool and that rec building, that's everything.
Well, we're worried about materials for cell phone towers, the fence,
Absolutely.
so we should be asking about a fence that's surrounding a pool that, lots
Is it
more
open?
people will
Is it
see.
open metal?
Okay, so if the petitioner can bring us a
It's
little more.
It's an open style metal fence, so it's
Okay.
a decorative fence.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one more question.
All right, one more before we get to midnight, okay.
So there you go. No, and actually, I apologize, I asked all my questions, but one of our commissioners, I know, is not participating in the discussion, and he always likes to ask about security cameras. So
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
figured I'd ask what if any plans there are for security around the interior, exterior. Has that been contemplated yet?
So we've talked a little bit about that, and everything will be key fob, but no security cameras due to liability reasons.
What kind of liability reasons?
Elaborate on that.
Well, because then if something does happen and the camera doesn't get it, or things like that. So we're just gonna key fob everything.
But wait a second, I got a question. Carly, can I ask you a question about that? If McDonald's puts up security cameras and something happens to one of their employees and because their camera doesn't get it, and so that you're telling me that McDonald's has just opened itself up to a major lawsuit?
Well, I don't think Carly's going to give legal advice, and I think we're getting a little off topic, but I think she answered
But
the
the
question.
liability issues
No,
is
the
strange.
question was answered.
Yeah, it was answered, so.
But it's certainly something you could request and make a condition.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Anything we haven't covered yet? Mark, did you have
Any
one other
security?
issue?
And is there a 24-hour person?
There won't be a
or-
door person, everything will just be key fobbed.
Okay. And how about maintenance or a,
We'll have on-site maintenance and management.
How are people going to be buzzed into units? Is it going to be like a butterfly system where you can buzz them in through your cell phone?
Right, exactly, yep.
At all entrances or just the main?
Just the main entrances.
So
They'll need a
all
key-
guests of residents will have to go through the main entrance. They can't get in through any other door.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions on topics we haven't already addressed? Okay, hearing none. I think we've given you some homework to bring back to us to look at, and I think we're contemplating a public hearing on June 1st on this, so we'll look forward to seeing some more information as well.
Graduation is on June 1st for 161. That's like, you're missing out on 200 families that are concerned about this. 400 graduating, 200
Well, I
in that area.
can't control when graduations are, but, you know, certainly if you have some
meetings are on
comments or
first and third
concern,
Thursday.
you know, the meetings are certainly taped and whatnot.
Why don't you bring them up?
Make it 4 weeks.
Anyway,
There's a moon.
at this time, we can take comments from the public if it pertains to the design or amenities of the project. Welcome to have you step up. And
So, in regard to prior meetings such as this, and going back to the pumping station, which was something I wasn't expecting in my backyard when I moved in, there was a request to go from 3 stories to 4 stories in this meeting. It never got to a vote, as was already talked about. And we were told that if it didn't go to 3 to 4 stories, these are not my words, these were the presenter's words, if we don't go to 4 stories and don't have an elevator, don't come back to me complaining about who moves it next door to you. This commission also was interested in the people involved. Setback from the street seems to be a really important topic, but they were concerned about setback from the people and what a visual block these things are. And it just seems odd that this was all approved back in 1990, but we had to go for a variance to go from 3 stories to 4 stories, and it was also discussed that it was never voted on. So it's confusing to me.
well, that's why I think we want to see a copy of the ordinance so we know, you know, what, it's really not the commission's purvey to, and certainly can't change any ordinances or whatever's in existence. So, you know, we'll certainly take a look at that, but we're kind of limited by what's been done and approved, so, you know, we
But it
certainly
hasn't
have-
been approved. We're all
Well-
assuming it has.
No, we're not assuming anything. If
It
there
is
is,
approved.
if there is an ordinance on
But
file.
you said it wasn't.
No, I said the ordinance is approved, and in the ordinance, it actually states that the units are increased, I'm trying to find it here.
From 2000?
The 1989 one?
When Crenna
No,
Development was here,
In 2000, the substantial deviation was approved, and at that time, the original PUD, it actually increased the number of dwelling units from 27 acres of 352 dwelling units to an overall, well, the whole point is
Anyway,
height.
okay,
Height
the
was an
point,
increase
the
in
point
building
is,
height.
the point is, if there's
Okay,
a
we'll
standing
look
ordinance.
into that.
Right, if there is
The-
a standing ordinance on file that the village government has enacted, then, we're not the village government, we can't do anything about that. We're gonna take a look at that and
that's
see
all I
where we
ask.
go.
And then also
But-
on the pumping station itself, they had major soil issues, and that building was put up 10 feet higher than what it was approved for. So I'm not talking about the height of the structure, but the grade level it was supposed to start at. It ended up being, the foundation was poured 10 feet too high. And it was determined at that point that, and this came from Village themselves, told me this, because they came out. And I happened to be a somewhat interested party. And they said, well, it's too late now. So we have the 100-year floodplain that runs in our backyard. Adding 10 feet to that, and where this apartment building is, I haven't heard any questions about what that might do to rain, and more importantly, getting rid of it. It's already a cyclone down there when it rains.
And I think that's something we can raise at a public hearing. Obviously, they've got engineering staffs and engineering plans. There is, I noticed on the plan, there is a detention pond in place. So
with all
hopefully
due respect, that's great if it's followed.
Oh, I agree.
And so my one experience with working through this is once it's built and nobody here is in its backyard, nobody sees it.
Well, that has nothing to do, if I was living on top of it, I'd feel the same way you do about it. But, all we can do is look at what's in front of us and what we have the ability to do. I can tell you personally, having lived here since 1971, it's been my philosophy not to approve anything or recommend approval. I can't approve anything. But recommend approval of the village board, anything that is going to adversely affect somebody's property values. I mean, that's a fundamental thing I did,
But that's what everybody's here for.
Exactly.
Nobody here on this board can honestly say that a rental community in Tinley Park is, and that's great.
We're not going to get into the basis on that. It's, like I said, if
we need
there's
to.
anything, and I agree, well, that's something that you can address with
Everybody
the people
here
who set
wants
the
to
ordinance.
address that.
No, I understand. But this is only the plan commission, okay? All we can do is look at what's in front of us and do what's best for you within the limitations we have here.
And the other, in the last commission that I was in front of, they seemed very interested in making sure that everything was covered, including all these people who live right across the street. You're going to have 4 stories of buildings, windows, looking right in my window. And I might be okay with that, but some people might not be. So, it's really important that these people that live right across the street from it are going to have a block of building that's right there. And I think it's really important that all these people should be heard because this impacts.
I agree.
This impacts a lot of people, and we're already dealing with a lot, which is none of your fault, with what's happening with the schools. And these are other things that are just going to push people out of this community and try to get tax dollars out of people that don't live here. And instead, we're more interested in putting transient occupants in an area that isn't going to attract those people, so we're going to have to find them somewhere, and that's going to come from subsidies. So,
well, and that's not the issue here. But again, we just to remind you, this is not a public hearing yet on this issue, and I'm sure we're still gathering facts on it. We haven't discussed on a vote, but I'd certainly want to hear from people. But keep in mind, there's limitations to what the commission here can do. So, yes, sir.
Hi, my name's John Wagner. I've lived in Brookside Glen since 1998, I'm also treasurer, don't get mad at me, of the Homeowners Association. So
I don't envy you.
Yeah, you don't. You're right. Thank you. Very intelligent man. Okay, I've only got one question, and I've got two little comments that talk about the numbers. I'm also a CPA for what it's worth. My one question is, when I heard all about there's negotiation and give and take when we have these planned unit developments. Nothing's cast in stone. It can be changed. I understand that the 144 units is pre-approved. However, is there enough leeway to go from ownership to rental? And is that something that has to be variance? That's the one question I have, and I don't know that answer. That's why I'm asking that question. Because rental versus ownership is a huge difference, okay, in the area. So I don't know if that's a major problem or if the 144 just means anything. That's one question. That's the only question, not a comments.
Right, no, but that's not an issue this commission can
Okay, but it
address.
is an issue to the residents.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay, and to the main, the reason
I mean,
we-
believe personally, it's always an issue to me
The
too when I live in
reason
town,
we
but-
moved to Brookside Glen was for all the different things that it offered, and rental units were not part of that, which is one of the reasons we're there. The other two comments, one, we talk about bicycling to the train. Anybody who lives here that has to go up 80th Avenue over 191st, not going to happen. And I don't think we, as a village, have control to widen that bridge to make that accessible to walkers or to bikers.
As I recall from,
It is planned, it's
Yeah.
already designed.
Well, it's designed, but when do we get state approval for that when the state's bankrupt?
Right.
So let's just leave that for a minute.
No,
I understand. The other thing, okay, the county's broke too. The other thing we got here is the $1,500 to $2,500 rents. For what it's worth, you can get a house with our exorbitant taxes for $2,500, and you get a 3,300 square foot house in Brookside Glen, all single residents for that price a month. So how do they think they're going to get a two-bedroom rental for that? And if they can't command those rents, $1,500 to $2,500, what exactly are they really going to get? And then how much can that place be maintained at the lower rents? Because that is a big issue. $1,500 to $2,500 is pie in the sky. If you can't get to the train station easily, you're not going to get the millennials that just want to watch their phone and walk on the train. I've got one of those at home.
I have two at home.
Okay, so, but
believe
you
me,
see
I'm
what I'm
not-
talking about. So those are
Yes.
considerations you need to think about.
So, no, that's why I think we're interested in seeing the market study. I think that you've heard the commission had requested to see that, so, okay, thank you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Dr. Janet Gwen, and I actually reside in a townhouse that is directly adjacent to the property that you're proposing. My backyard will look at the parking lot. The dog park and the parking lot. Okay, so I moved to Frankfurt Square 19 years ago. And as a resident of Frankfurt, I watched as Brookside Glen, it was a glorious layout. And all the Frankfurt Square residents, we watched as this unfolded in front of our eyes. And I remember having conversations with my neighbors, and they talked about how beautiful this development was when they went up. And then I met the parents of Brookside Glen through my two children, and they were so proud of their community. So in 2009, I was lucky enough to move into the townhouse. And I thought, you know what? I've made it. I've made it to the Brookside Glen side of the street from the square. And you guys all know what I'm talking about.
And we're happy to have you, by the way.
Thank you. I've been here 9 years, and I love my corner of the block. So after I relocated, I realized that I was a vested member of the community, and this community is filled with stakeholders. Our stakeholders are committed and passionate about our homes. We are passionate about the schools our kids attend, and most importantly, we are passionate about supporting each other as a community. When all of our neighbors, we all know that one of our neighborhood children got ill, severely ill. And what Brookside Glen did was schedule a 5K walk to help the family have funds raised.
And that's one of the reasons I enjoy living in Tinley Park.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I came here, 40 some years ago, so, okay.
And when our high school was slated to close, all of the people in Brookside Glen stood up and we spoke on behalf of our children. And when my dog, Coco Chanel, everybody knows, went missing 12 months ago. Hundreds of Brookside Glen residents left their homes for 30 hours in the streets searching for my dog. And if it wasn't for these people back here, I would not have found her. People that I had never met, but people that were part of the community. And because of this, I feel that an influx of 144 to 300 plus transient residents in our community does not support the mission or our core values of what we have built and tried to maintain for so many years. So because of that, I personally oppose the construction of 144 units to bring people into our community that are not invested in our community and what we have built here. I am not opposed to people coming into our community on that plot of land, which is literally, I'm the person that has to see it. It is right next to my house. The condos off 80th Avenue East are beautiful. These would be people that were vested in the communities because those people came out of their condos that September night and looked for my dog for me. And those people stand up for their kids and they go to the 5K walks and the 5K runs. So I do not mind having more people in our community. What I would like is for our community to not be filled with people who are going to come and go and who aren't going to hold the hands of neighbors and who are not going to be here to support each other.
No, I appreciate your comments.
I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Hey, what's up? How's it going? Paul,
Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys too. Good questions up there. Paul, I've got a quick question for you. Is this currently on the whiteboard, this development?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I guess my question is, when was it first put on the whiteboard? If you know by chance.
The whiteboard is our monthly reports. They officially, nothing goes on the board until it's officially submitted. And it was submitted in June or July of last year.
Okay, so it's been on the whiteboard for almost a year. Okay, no, just curious as far as when the development started happening. Thanks.
It's been in the monthly reports.
Okay. I didn't have a chance to look today. I'm sorry about that. But I figured while I'm up here, I might as well ask.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Molly Ordez, and you said this has been on the whiteboard for a year. And the night we had the meeting, I think it was March 9th, about the 80th Avenue improvements, the bridge, and village people were there, and not the village people, but people from the village were there. And the engineering company had people there. And I asked someone from the building department, and I forget who it was, but I was at the desk back there, asked if anything was being considered for that property, because I live right there. And they said nobody has been interested in doing any development there for years. So March of this year, when I was at that meeting about the bridge, why was this being? Is this a secret?
It's not a secret.
Was he a liar? Or is he stupid? Which one was that?
I don't know who you're referring to, but
This was about the 80th Avenue improvements, the new bridge that they're going to build.
Right, but was it a village board meeting?
It was not a board meeting. It was an open house.
So was it Will County staff responsible?
It was Tinley Park. There were Tinley Park people there. He had a name tag on. I didn't write the name down, but that's what I was told, is nobody had been interested in doing anything with this land, and that was in March of this year, right before the election. Right before the election. Secret. And it smacks a Buckeye all over again.
I went briefly, and there was only the public works director there. I didn't see any other village staff. If you would have talked to me, I would have given you that response. But I'm not sure.
Anyway, as I said, we don't operate behind closed doors. We don't have any agendas here. And the reason I volunteered.
I think somebody does.
Well, the only reason I volunteered to come back and chair this commission is because I don't want to move out of town either. So.
Even the public works director, who she said was there, he knows about the project as well, because we have something called the DRT meetings every 3 weeks, and it's been on that agenda forever. So I can't explain for other people why they would say anything like that.
But that's one of the reasons we're happy to see people here, because again, a lot of rumors and innuendos go around, a lot of things happen, a lot of people weren't paying attention to a lot of things for a long period of time, which is sad. But no, I'm happy to see everybody here for that reason. But without knowing who you're talking about, and
Yeah.
you know, we're just the plan commission. I
Yeah,
can't
I know.
control the,
From now on,
whatever's
I'll
going
write
on in
things
some
down.
bridge, yeah. But no, I
Thank you.
appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Did that group from 183rd and Oak Park Avenue also come in front of you?
Right,
That we didn't know about?
right.
For all the housing that got stopped?
Well, we're not talking about that today. We've dealt with that.
Just briefly, looking through a few numbers, I pulled up some numbers from the 2014 U.S. Census. Population in Tinley Park at that time was 57,280. Orland Park, 58,666, so relatively the same amount.
Probably close, yeah.
Rental units in Orland Park at that time, 1,621. In Tinley Park, 2,654, over 1,000 more. Don't you think we're saturated at this point with rental units? Do you think we need more rental units when we are so saturated?
Like I
as
said,
it
we'll
is?
have to look at the market studies and see what's going on. I don't know that I can answer that.
And then just briefly here, just pulling up information on stories about high rental units, meaning concentration or amount. Story from Washington Post, too many rental units indeed has negative impact on property values. That's in the October 21st, 2015 Washington Post. Also in Bankrate, reported again, too many renters stagnate or decrease home values. And finally, the top 4 reasons that negatively impact communities or home values is, number 1, bad schools. Number 2, having a strip club. Number 3, high amount of renters. And number 4, a homeless shelter. So we're dealing with, I'm not saying a bad school, but a bad school situation. And you toss in more renters, it's unfair to the Berkside Glen community. I asked for you to be a resident of Tinley, which you are, and side with all these residents instead of one builder. I ask you for common sense.
Okay. Appreciate your comments, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just have to echo the comments that have been made by the other residents and the hope that there's concern on the part of the commission to take their concerns into mind. And that if you say, we'll have to look at the market research and market study, that you actually do that and take that very seriously. Now, as far as density, notwithstanding that this was approved in 1990, none of you were around in 1990. None of you were on.
Well, not on the commission, certainly, no. Okay.
Not on the commission.
I'm happy to say I'm still above ground, yeah.
What was approved in 1990 really has no bearing on what you have to consider now.
Well, and you're right. We can't rescind ordinances.
No, I
as a
understand
commission.
that.
And the fact that it's there.
But it still has to make sense.
Oh, I agree with you. But
Has to make
I think
sense.
what I'd like you all to understand is we have our hands tied to a degree. We are not an elected body that makes law. And we are constrained by whatever was done in the past. If you want someone to change the law, I think you know where that is. That's the village board. And, we're going to certainly look out for your interest insofar as we can. But I can't change the law that was passed, nor can anybody else up here, because that's not within our ability or purview. Even if I wanted to, if you follow what I'm saying. So, again, we're going to try to do what we can within the limits we have, within the limits of the issues that we are allowed to deal with. And I hear a lot of issues that I wish I could deal with for you. But I'd like you to know that, we have limitations as a commission of what we can do. But I appreciate hearing, we certainly want to pass on some words to the village government.
Well, let me understand, though.
Sure.
What is your purpose, then?
What
is your purpose?
Our purpose is to recommend to the village board as to the amenities and as to the green space and as to the things that we're allowed to make recommendations on. And beyond that, as I said, we can't change the ordinances. That's something the village elected officials have to do. just so I'm clear. I mean, I'm not trying to,
Just amenities, not whether or not, and you're talking about looking at the market study and asking whether or not this can support $1,500 to $2,500 a month in rent. That's not something that you have to review and make recommendations?
well, we'd like to look at it, but I mean, if it's already been approved as by ordinance for the village, there's nothing I can do. If someone stupid wants to build something they're going to lose money on, I can't control that.
They go bankrupt, it's real easy with an LLC.
Well, and that's, I think, points that we want to raise if as the process goes down with the village government. But like, as I said, I'm not an elected official any longer. It's been 25 years. So much as I'd like to be able to do that, that's not the purview of the commission. All we can do is make the recommendations to the board on the issues that are up in front, whatever the height variances are, things of that nature. We're kind of limited in scope, just so you understand. It's not that I don't want to respond to what you're saying or do things that you'd like me to do, or anyone else here. But I just want you to understand where we are kind of hamstrung.
But you make recommendations to the board.
Right, within the areas we're allowed to recommend on in this process. And that's why I'm trying, it's not always easy to grasp, but if there is an ordinance in place, that's an existing law that your village government has enacted. We can't do anything about that. You'll have to go to the village board and have them do something about it. If I'm clear, do you follow me?
No, I understand.
All right.
I understand, but they do rely on what you're doing here.
Well, let's hope so.
The
yeah.
information that you're gathering.
Sure.
I mean, you have a certain amount of influence.
Well, I don't know.
And are you going to say, well, we like the amenities and therefore,
right.
and no
again,
control over
we certainly
outlined in section 7 that relates to planned unit developments. That's the limitations of this.
Right.
I understand.
It's codified in the code, and that's the limitations to which they can adhere to.
Section 7 also dictates, and I think it's subsection 2, maybe J, because I've read all the ordinances, that it has to be in public interest. So do you have the ability to say that you believe it is not within the interest of the public?
Well, this is not.
There is an ordinance under that section.
No, I understand, but we are not recommending a new PUD here. You see what I'm saying? And that's
In answer to her question, they can look at something with respect to in the public interest, but only with respect to the site plan and the design of the buildings, not to ownership. Ownership is not under review. That's
So
what
the fact that it is above the current ordinance in height and in egress would be a situation which we can say that we do not prefer and we oppose, and then they can...
Absolutely.
Okay.
They can say it's not in the public interest because of the design of the buildings and the site plan.
So then I
But they
change it, I
cannot-
would like to have it set back 24 feet.
Can I?
Okay, but, all right.
Chair, can I just add in one thing here? Can I just explain it, because I understand, I think we all do where you guys are coming from, and I think I'm going to be a little bit, I won't, don't worry, you won't have to kick me. But there's a reason why we're asking all the questions and we're going down the paths that we are, because that's what we can go and look into. That's why we were asking the architect about the flat brick versus the brick that's in all of your buildings. That's why we were asking about the heights. Those are things that we can look at and make recommendations on. We cannot change an ordinance. If there is an ordinance in effect, and that's why we asked to see the ordinance. You have our word, and we did not ask, by the way, for the market research to support the rents. That was not right. There's some statements in the staff report regarding market research that we've questioned, and again, that's within our scope, that we question whether those are valid or not, and if the market research points out that they are valid, then they go away. So I promise you, I think we all promise you, if you've known anything about this commission for the last year and a half.
Has it been that long already?
Yes.
I feel like I've been here for 20
homework.
years.
And we will do the best that we can. And when we asked for this, and when we asked the architect for the building materials, Even McDonald's came in here, and as good as the new McDonald's is going to be, we wanted to see everything. The church, St. Stephen's, is building a new building. We want to see everything. We will do our research. You have our word on that. We want to keep hearing from you when the next the public hearing is. We want you to come out and speak. Please feel free to speak. Ask the questions that you want. But again, we only have a certain area that we can address, and that's what we're trying to address. And that's why, to the gentleman in the back, why we're talking about brick versus flat brick, masonry versus precast, or whatever it is. There's things that we can look at, and we can make recommendations based upon that.
Well, I'm just saying that if you're asking for the market research, you're going to be given the market research. Well, then obviously we're asking you to carefully review the market research and make sure that the burden is that you place the burden on the developer to see that their market research supports the statements that they're making here tonight.
That's exactly why we asked for it, sir.
That's one of the big things I'm asking.
That's right. Thank you.
That's fair enough. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hi.
Good evening. Dr. Daniel Gwynn. Thank you guys for having us here tonight. Thank you for your service to the community, to the staff, the secretary, the commissioners here. Took a few notes throughout the presentation. I definitely don't want to hit all of them. The first thing that came to mind is when I looked at the agenda, it suggested there was a substantial deviation to the plan. And something I was listening for all night was kind of what's that justification for the substantial deviation of the plan? And it seemed to me, and I certainly could be wrong, that the primary justification is if we don't deviate from the plan, we won't be able to build it, right? I kind of got that sense, and maybe I'm wrong.
No, actually, substantial deviation is defined by the ordinance. And if in other words, if it wasn't a substantial deviation, you wouldn't even have an opportunity to speak about it.
Right.
We wouldn't have an opportunity to look at it.
Right.
And it's defined by the ordinance that if it involves the height of the building change, things of that nature, then it's just categorized as that.
Right.
So it's not what we would, you want to call it, we're going to argue is it substantial or it's not, or I feel it is, it isn't. It's just defined in the law that's there.
Okay.
So that's why those words were
Call
used.
it major, minor.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds major. It feels major.
Yeah, I agree. But that's where it comes from.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stick on that point too much. I think one of the commissioners had mentioned that they'll be driving past it. I won't be driving past it. I'll be driving up to it, basically. I'm in the townhouse that's absolutely as close to this development as you can be. I don't know if I'm in the parking lot. I haven't quite lined up the mats, but certainly pretty close to the parking lot that I'd be able to see the cars. I know one of the things that was mentioned was lighting nuisance, and given that this is maybe 20 feet off the back of where I live, I don't necessarily understand how we're going to light this without having that lighting nuisance. In addition to that, in looking at the drawings of it, there's a large kind of a platform on top of the parking garage. That's going to be within maybe 50 yards of where I live, and probably as tall as my townhouse. So I feel like that, I'm going to completely lose any sense of any privacy. I think you had mentioned yourself that if it reduces property values, maybe not something we should be doing. I don't see how that wouldn't reduce property values.
Well, and again, that's where, we're talking about things that perhaps the village board has to consider that, we can only do so much. But
Certainly.
I want you to know within the limits that we have here, that's, whatever we can do to, within the framework of what we're allowed to, that's going to be the guiding point from all of us here that I can tell.
Right. No, absolutely. Because I don't even want to live there
One of the
anymore.
things I will
Much less trying to sell it to somebody else, right?
One of the
Seeing
things
that.
I've noticed on here, and I make notes to myself, but I want to make sure we include
Sure.
next time.
Yeah.
We will provide you with some distances from existing structures to, I think we should have done that in this report, so you can get an idea.
Well, I could show you on the map. I mean, if you look at the dog park and the parking lot and the trees, my back deck is right there.
I know, I'm saying if it would be helpful to the commission.
Certainly.
I'll provide that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Carly and Scott, I think you're getting some information. If you can bring that to us for the public hearing, that certainly will be helpful, I think, for the people and for the commission.
Right. And then one other point I wanted to bring up is, and I think Mike left, we have really strict guidelines within the community Oh, he's here?
Yeah, or
And he
Angel
could
Lynn.
probably speak to some of those guidelines. Noise ordinance is certainly one of them. It's within the community. How loud are you allowed to be after a certain amount of time? And I'm wondering if any of those guidelines are going to be carried over to the new residents, being that I'm going to be living kind of in the parking lot of the new residents. Is that kind of information going to be carried over? Well, no, but our community guidelines are more strict than the village ordinance, the HOA.
Doesn't even allow leasing.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's something you can request of the developer in the public hearing, if you'd like to. I mean, this really is, we're doing a great job of question and answering, but really it's public comment.
Right. And try to fill in on as much as we can, but really that's what the public hearing is for, to answer the questions. But again, I think we've got the sense of everybody here. I don't know if anybody else has any comments without a lot of questions. Sure.
She's hiding back there.
But I do have a comment.
All right.
Oh, well,
Thank you for
that's
your
what public comment is for making comments. So come right up and give us a comment.
Good evening. My name is Mary Grahovic, and I live in part of this Brookside Glen wonderful townhome community right around the corner from Janet and Daniel. I do know your name, Daniel. I'm a public educator for 28 years. Has anybody thought of the 144 or maybe 288 cars that will be coming through our neighborhood? And children who play in our streets, right down the block from me. I don't have children, they're grown. But I do have Cooper, my dog, who I do keep on a leash. I wonder if he gets off. I don't think he will. But my more concern is the children of our community.
Thank you very much.
That's my comment.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Frank Clare, and I live across the street from this guy right here, and across the street from Mary. But my townhouse is probably next closest. I could throw a ball and hit the parking lot. And my concern is that the design is fine. I mean, that's great, but my question is, why there? You're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, like with the dog park. It's going to be right behind their back deck. And we have dogs, but I'm not going to your house and have them go do their duty behind your house.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
And then,
My
and then
dog
when the
is as well,
suggestion
yeah.
was put it on the other side of the building, well, no, the retention pond's over there. So you're okay, well then, forget about us. Just put it over by the other side where the people live. It doesn't, that goes back to my question. It doesn't fit. Why are you making it force and fit? Why is it got to be that spot? As big as Tinley Park is, with all the open spaces, why there?
Put them over at the Tinley Park Mental Health Center.
There,
Yeah.
or put them over by
North High School.
Panduit built that big building over there. There's a big
No, I
field
appreciate
over
that.
there.
I think, again, that's a good point to raise at the public hearing for the developer, is to placement of that. But, one of the things we're taking information on right now.
All right, that's all I have to say.
All right, appreciate
Seems like
it.
you're forced.
I live on the east side of Oak Park Avenue, and I've brought this up before the commission when you had a meeting at the Odyssey. The amount of homes for sale in Tinley Park today is 499. 2,000 rental units. I don't know how many homes in Tinley Park on the east side are being rented out and condos being rented out, plus abandoned and foreclosed homes. What is going to make somebody come back and rent a luxury apartment over on 191st Street? There's nothing to draw them there. We got 499 homes for sale in Tinley Park. When you do your market analysis, can you please look to see how many homes and condos are being rented out in Tinley Park? How many homes are foreclosed on in Tinley Park? How many homes are empty in Tinley Park? I got a house across the street from me, people just walked away for it. It's gone for $154,000. 15 years ago, that same house was $300,000.
Oh, I appreciate your thoughts.
So why do we need rentals? I feel sorry for Stephanie when she moved here from Kansas. She couldn't find a rental house. I wish she would have called me. I could have found you 100 of them.
You wouldn't have spent $2,000 to rent it.
Right, and they'd be cheap.
Well, thank you.
So please, As a property owner in Tinley Park, I want to be relevant. I want to be heard. I want my fellow citizens to be heard. Please consider us, because guess what?
Stop it.
You know, every time somebody moves out, our prices go up, our taxes go up.
I understand.
And if you live on the Bremen side of town, as you know, we just got our property reassessed. I want to know where in Lancaster, I could buy a house for that kind of money that they're saying that my house is worth now. I can't buy one, can't find one anywhere. 154 as opposed to being assessed for 260,000. Now, if you guys don't have any power to do anything about this, can you please bring somebody from the village to these meetings where we could address our issues to them, and maybe they'll hear our pleas, and maybe they could do something about these ordinances that were passed in 1990.
Well, and that's the purview of the village board, as I said, so, and they can do something.
Well, if you give me a name, I'll call them up. I'll ask for them to come to the meeting.
They meet three Tuesdays a month, so, you know, I think.
You know, you guys all took this position. Please listen to the citizens. We want to be heard. We want to be relevant. When we ask a question, we don't want to hear, well, that's irrelevant. If it was zoned for condos and now it's going to be a rental property, that's relevant. We don't want to be dismissed. We're not fifth graders.
No, no one here is trying to dismiss you.
I feel that way.
Well, I'm just trying to explain that we have a limited role in this process.
Then get somebody here that needs to attend these meetings. If you're going to have an open hearing, somebody needs to answer our questions.
That's why we're going to have the village board have final approval.
Just like these folks, June 1st, they got a graduation. Oh, what a good day to have the next meeting, June 1st. Nobody will be here.
Well, I can assure you that I don't plan the meetings to keep people from coming. I have a hard enough time making the meetings here as it is, so.
Just delay it. Make it 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks later, that's all. Just delay it. It's really easy to do.
We can look into that if people would rather have it.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you would look into it. Thank you. That's all I got.
But, you know, again, I just want to encourage you to follow through the process all the way to where it's going.
Well, I think the market study is fairly important, so if it's not extensive to the point that everyone's kind of requesting the details of this and that, it might take more time to get a more complete market study.
Independent
I'm not
market
sure
study,
what
I
the
hope.
market
It's not a- It's not necessary to make the decision because it's not.
But here, we're supposed to consider property values within the neighborhood, enjoyment of other property. This is under standards for a special use. So if I'm reading this correctly, which I received from staff, I feel like I'm being told to consider these things and take their concerns.
With respect to the site plan and the property.
But if the structure is there, the site's there, that's in someone's backyard.
But a structure, whether it's condo or rental, is not.
That's not within our.
We don't want to.
But anyway, we have one more guy who'll give you a chance to comment.
Give no one else
My name is Michael Stocklos. I am Vice President and Treasurer of the Townhouse Association, which many of these people have already spoken to. And Lori just brought up my point. What I was going to bring up was the special use permit. According to the lettered part of the packet I got, 5 of these A, B, C, D, E, and F all fail to meet, a criteria for you to approve this site plan. Because there's nothing been talking about parking, or not, I shouldn't say parking, but ingress and egress out of the subdivision. You try getting off of Greenway Boulevard at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, making a left-hand turn on the 80th Avenue. And then, once they finished redoing the bridge, when you have a 4-lane highway bottlenecking down to 2 lanes south of 191st Street, that's going to make it even worse. Even if there's 288 cars, say half of them go one way, half of them go the other way, you still try getting out at 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And God forbid you want to go straight across the subdivision from one side of 80th to the other. We brought this up I brought this up personally when they had the open house for the Bridge Commission, saying there's something should be done where they extend the 4 lanes farther down 80th Avenue, which has nothing to do with this meeting at all, but in a way it does, because there's no ingress or egress being talked about how these people are getting in and out of the subdivision. There's only 2 entrances and exits. That's it. You know, it's fine for us, because there's only, what, 26 townhouses?
There's 62, and with an
62
additional
units.
44, that's a 232% increase in residential living units for an entrance, one single entrance and a single exit.
They have a different entrance. Magnuson.
There's only 2 entrances.
I understand
There's
that.
one off Greenway, there's one off which will be one off Magnuson.
That one's closed right now.
You know, so once it's built, there's still only going to be one entrance on each end of the property.
I think, you know, as you indicated, it's a concern I think we all should have on this, but it's not pertaining to what we can do something about.
But it's under the special use permit ordinance under section 7.
Which is what you're considering, part of it, which Lori brought up, you know, just before I got up here.
But only in relationship to the structure, site plan, and architecture.
And why is this all written from the village?
But these standards, when they review these standards, they're not looking at them in relation to the improved density and unit count. So your point that the total unit count has an impact on schools or traffic or any of those things, that decision has been made.
That decision's been made because you can only get a special use permit. You can't get a special use permit if it's over 20% of the PUD. And I did the stats, it's 7% of the PUD. And so I understand that's why you're at the area you're at now. But there are multiple subsections of section 7 that indicate what we're saying, and it's traffic flow, it's safety of the residents, and it's under public interest. I do understand it. I ran group homes for 25 years and I built 50 facilities. I've been to Tinley Park and I've asked for a permit to build here, and at that time Tinley Park didn't want mentally retarded people in their facilities here. So I've gone through this process. There are a list of ordinances under section 7, like subsection 2, I do believe A through C and J. And I believe those are things that you people can actually speak to in order for you to make a decision on if you're going to give a special issue permit. For this, you have to look at the height because it exceeds
All right, well,
7.1.
we are going to look at the things we can look at, okay? We've talked about that. No, I appreciate your comment.
And my last comment is, I can understand putting 9 16-unit buildings because it's all broken up, but to have 2 huge, nothing was even said about how big these buildings actually are, how long they are. Huge. You know, it's like going down to Vegas and going down the Strip. That's how huge these buildings are, and we have to look at it. I'd rather look at nothing. Thank you.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening. My name is Tom Staunton. I live at 8118 Brookside Glen Drive, which is just south. I live in Holmes. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here tonight. We all know about our concerns as residents, and having served on that board and in the village board, I know what you guys and ladies are up against. I do not envy your job one bit. I do have a couple of points and questions. Will there be a signal at 191st Street in Magnuson? Traffic signal?
I don't believe so.
So will it be a right-in? So will it be a right-in, right-out, or just?
I think it's a full access. I'd have to.
I'm sorry, I can't hear very well. What was the answer?
I will check on that, but I doubt it just from my basic understanding of engineering and spacing the signalized intersections.
Okay.
I believe it's programmed. The engineering plans I've seen have shown the full access at that location.
Has
But
there
I'll
been-
check on that to make sure.
Thank you. Has there been a traffic study done?
The traffic study would have been done when the approval was done for this density before.
Okay, that being understood, can we have a traffic study done again, please? Because now you're going from a 2000 plan that was approved by the board back in 2000. 1990. Or 1990, whatever the year was, to 2017. So times have changed. So.
Right, but again, I feel like I'm saying the same thing. A traffic study will be a result of density and unit counts. That is not up for discussion or decision.
And I understand that.
So a traffic study, while a traffic study could be done, I don't know, is it one was done before or what, but let's say the traffic study, at worst case scenario, says this is too much traffic. we can't take away the density right of this property owner.
No, but you could request street lighting, or not street lighting, signalization. There's a couple different things you could put in the turn lanes, stop signs, things of that nature that are going to be going.
Well, there definitely will be a controlled intersection from Van Newsom going under 191st, but
Well, there would have
I'm
to
not
be
an engineer, so I don't want to guess, but I
Okay,
don't
you know my feelings on it. I'm sure the other people will feel this way as well. Going Greenway to Magnuson, that is a city street, I believe? That's for staff, you guys?
Sure is.
Okay, so the village will be responsible for that snow removal and any kind of maintenance that comes up over the concern? What about the property that this developer is doing? That'll be on them as well?
On their own property. because
That's them, that's strictly their,
All theirs.
okay, just want to make that sure, or make that known. This is a question for the developer. Do you own that other section to the east, that B3 that was up in the, who owns that section?
Well, Tom,
think Malone-
again, this is the comment section. I think some of what you're saying is probably good for the public hearing when it comes.
This is also for you guys too, these are,
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
then I can't ask that next question. Have you considered village costs for the future? You talk about all these amenities that you're giving to the people that are gonna be living there. None of us live there, or anybody who lives in the north part of Tinley is gonna be living there. There is a certain cost value to police, fire, public works that you, as a developer or the renter, will not be paying. So we'll be encompassing that burden as taxpayers. You'll be paying taxes, yes, but has there been any kind of like, we need one more police officer, we need, I don't know, not a fire rig, but is there anything of that nature been done?
Again, this isn't question and answer. This isn't.
Well, okay, fine. These are points
The way I
that,
would answer that is the density has already been approved. That unit count and the impact of that unit count has already been approved.
that's your answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Hi. I just wanted to, and again, it's an inquiry. Are there any other rental properties in Tinley Park that have the built-in pool? I know that there's the condo over on Oak Park Avenue that has the built-in pool, but I was just wondering if there were, I don't know of any rental facilities that have that.
That's really not an issue that we're discussing, and I'm not aware of any, but I'm.
Well, I asked this just because up front, in the beginning of, in a workshop and discussing all this planning and everything, my thoughts go to kids and things like that. And being in a community where, and I think the pool looks great, and I think it's great for the people there, it just, to make sure that things are very thorough, that's your responsibility. What does the village have in place in terms of what they would be requiring of the developer on like liability insurance for the renters there? Because there are 2-bedroom units and there are going to be some small children there. Is just a fence up around the pool enough? I would think that the village would hate to see something come back in a tragic accident where somehow the liability came back to the village because the planning process on a pool was not thorough enough.
If I understand, ma'am, your comment is to, let's take a look at what kind of security or fencing is around the pool.
Yeah, and also, liability insurance and legal input from the village attorney on what the property owner would need to be providing in that regard. It's because we don't have it here. And I'm not really knowledgeable in that area. It's something, though, that I know, that's the kind of world that we live in, and it needs to be carefully looked at and considered,
well, we'll see what kind
by
of
the village, I would say. So
that
was, I just really, I was thinking pool, issue when she had mentioned it, and I was glad she brought it up, but, even, taking that, having that very heavily looked at and consulting with legal counsel and that kind of thing. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, I want to express our appreciation for everybody who's coming, because, again, we value the opinion of everybody in the community. I know it's frustrating to some people, because, again, we can't go beyond the things we're allowed to do. We don't make the ordinances or anything else. We can only do what we can do, but we certainly value your input. And some of the points you raised in terms of if they're on the issues we can address, we certainly want to address that at the public hearing. So again, I'm sorry, you have a comment, ma'am, we haven't covered, or?
Sort of, yeah.
Well, is that a yes or no?
Well, I would say.
If you could step up, I'm sorry, I'm getting old and I can't hear as well as I used to.
You mentioned about that you could possibly wait 4 weeks until you have all your paperwork from them to have the next meeting. Is
Yeah, well, I
that-
think that was raised before as well.
So it's for 4 weeks from now.
Well,
They'll have all their paperwork in that you need.
I'll have to see what the schedule allows, but yeah, I mean.
Well, for sure, 4 weeks would give you more time to gather
Absolutely,
everything.
yeah.
So 4 weeks.
We'll give you notice of the public hearing as soon as we can figure out what the date is, yeah.
Well, how do we find out exactly?
Yeah, 4 weeks is ideal.
Do we have to go onto the
Everything,
website to find
all our
out?
meetings are posted on our website.
And what's on the
And this is
agenda?
And what's on the
Right,
agenda.
oh yeah, all that's on
Can
there.
I make a motion to postpone the public hearing on this for 2 additional weeks? Can I make a motion to do that?
I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, but we've got a lot of people that got kids going to
Yeah, for June
graduation.
first. I didn't say we're gonna have a meeting on June 1st. For all I know, I'm in Ohio again. So that's fine.
Well, that's
Maybe- maybe
a
that's
scheduled regular meeting. The question is whether or not.
Yeah, it's a regular scheduled meeting.
Because we have notice for the hearing and we're scheduled out through June and July. So I would have to look and see how that
Right.
affects.
We're gonna see what
some
works.
projects.
All right, I appreciate everyone's comments.
Yeah, but I think these guys don't have a
I
public
guess,
hearing.
we have to take a motion.
Thank you. So moved.
Thank you.
Oh, well,
Okay, so moving and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Second.
Nothing.